Chapter 1281. Although using an arrow to sneak attack someone was not that elegant, one must admit that it was the most effective and direct method. Due to this reason, Duan Lingtian deliberately refined the bow and arrow so that it would not shine. The bow and arrow could only display its terrifying power if it caught its opponent off guard. Regardless if it's the bow or the arrow, they're both royal-grade spirit weapons. Duan Lingtian's gaze fell on the bow and arrow that were completely black in color. With a raise of his hand, he infused his origin energy into them separately till a crisp sound resonated from them. Whoosh! Suddenly, Duan Lingtian's hand jerked before the arrow shot out. The air from where it swept past turned into a vacuum space, and when he retracted his hand, it set off a series of thunderous detonation sound. This is my first time crafting a royal-grade spirit weapon, and it already grants a 120% boost. Looks like my ability as a royal-grade weapons craftsman is quite good. Although the heaven and earth energy did not mobilize and solidify into the heaven and earth phenomenon, Duan Lingtian was able to tell the strength of the boost the bow and arrow gave. Whether it was the bow or arrow, both were royal-grade spirit weapons even though they were separate entities. I only need to inscribe the interlinking formation on them now. Duan Lingtian's heart jolted. He raised a hand and another pile of materials appeared. It hovered in the air as he controlled them using an invisible energy. These materials were for inscribing. He prepared to inscribe the interlinking formation on the bow and arrow that were just made, linking them together like an inseparable pair of mother and child. The interlinking formation was an extremely common inscription formation. Even on Cloud Continent, many people knew how to inscribe the interlinking formation as well. It was usually used on spirit weapons like the archery sets. When the arrow from the spirit archery set that was inscribed with the interlinking formation shot out, he only needed to activate the interlinking formation to summon the arrow back. Naturally, there was a range limit for the interlinking formation. The commonly used interlinking formation on Cloud Continent had a range limit of 100 meters. In other words, arrows that were shot out within the range of 100 meters could be summoned back using the interlinking formation. The arrow would be lost if it flew beyond 100 meters. Due to this reason, very few people on Cloud Continent would use a bow and arrow as a spirit weapon. It would be fine if one could kill an opponent who was more than 100 meters away with only one shot of the arrow. However, if one's shot missed, it would place one in a very dangerous situation if that was the only arrow one had. Moreover, the arrow's force also depended on its quality. Due to this reason, one could not carry too many arrows. Just like the royal-grade arrow in Duan Lingtian's hand. Even if he finished using the ink steel in his hand, he could only refine 2 arrows at most. Previously, when he went to Hidden Fog City to procure materials, he noticed there were no ink steels even in Hidden Fog City. One could easily imagine how rare the ink steel was. Moreover, the ink steel was a must-have item to refine royal-grade spirit weapons. Fortunately, the interlinking formation in the Rebirth Martial Emperor's memory has been upgraded by him. Its working range can go up to 500 meters. That's 5 times more than ordinary interlinking formations. Duan Lingtian sighed in relief when he thought of this. This meant if the arrow that was inscribed with the interlinking formation was within 500 meters, he could easily summon it back with the interlinking formation. However, if it flew past 500 meters, he would have to pick it up himself. If he encountered his enemies certainly would not give him the chance to retrieve the arrow. Due to this reason, unless he had more than one arrow in his hand or if he was confident could kill or severely injure his opponent in just a shot, he would not simply shoot the arrow out, especially if the opponent was more than 500 meters away. Looks like I need to use the remaining ink steel and some other materials to make another 2 arrows for spare just in case, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. In that case, he would have 2 more chances to make a blunder within 500 meters. If he was confident he could kill or severely injure his opponent in 3 shots of arrows, he would be able to shoot the arrow to his heart's content even if his opponent was more than 500 meters away. However, once the arrow that's shot out with my force leaves my sight, it would be a problem for me to look for it later. So unless it's absolutely necessary, it's better not to shoot at an opponent who's standing more than 500 meters away. Duan Lingtian smiled wryly when he thought about this. Putting aside other people's arrows, his arrow was a royal-grade spirit weapon after all. He was unwilling to part with it just like that. In the next instant, Duan Lingtian released his hand and began to inscribe the interlinking formation. Since the Rebirth Martial Emperor had inscribed and set up the inscription formation before, Duan Lingtian, who had already prepared the materials in advance, easily inscribed and set up the interlinking formation on the bow and arrow. Let's give it a try. After Duan Lingtian finished inscribing the interlinking formation, he lifted his hand and threw the arrow out. Whoosh! The sharp arrow pierced through the sky as though it was shot out with the bow. Its speed was faster than lightning. Duan Lingtian did not take his eyes off its trajectory. Just as it was about to leave the 500 meters range limit, Duan Lingtian's heart jolted before he quickly activated the interlinking formation on the bow in his hand. Whoosh! In just an instant, the arrow turned around and returned to his hand. Again, Duan Lingtian raised his hand again and threw the arrow out again. This time, he did not activate the interlinking formation on the bow. Instead, he chased after it. When he chased after it, he activated the strength he used to throw the arrow, and he relied on the strength from the boost that the Royal Grade Spirit Bow granted him. This was because the arrow was a Royal Grade Spirit weapon. If Duan Lingtian did not do this, he would be able to catch up to the arrow. Whoosh! Whoosh! Duan Lingtian's speed was almost similar to the arrow. Their speed was equally matched. However, since the arrow did not have any burst of subsequent energy, its speed gradually decreased. In the end, Duan Lingtian caught up to it and gripped it in his hand. And to think that I didn't shoot this arrow out from the bow, Duan Lingtian was clear if the arrow was shot out using the bow with his full strength, he would not be able to chase after it. Soon after, Duan Lingtian took out the cow tendon he had long prepared from his spatial ring. The cow tendon was from a 9th level void transformation stage cow-type demon beast. The cow tendon could be directly tied to the bow without the need of any refinement. When Duan Lingtian was making the bow, he had already made a joggle on the bow for the bowstring. After tying the bowstring on the bow and pulling it tautly, the bow and the bowstring were all in place. The bow was now complete. Now it's time for me to test the bow's power. Duan Lingtian took the arrow and placed it on the bow. He pulled the bowstring tightly before letting it go. However, just as he infused his strength into the bow and pulled the bowstring back into the shape of a full moon, an unexpected incident suddenly occurred. Snap! A loud and crisp sound echoed as the bowstring snapped. This, Duan Lingtian was completely stunned when he saw the cow tendon had snapped into two. When he returned to his senses after a long while, he could only smile wryly. Looks like the cow tendon of a 9th level void transformation stage demon beast is not enough to become the bowstring of a royal grade spirit archery set. Moreover, even if I don't use the arrow that's a royal grade spirit weapon, I can still easily snap it with just my strength alone. After all, it's merely a cow tendon from a 9th level void transformation stage cow-type demon beast. I didn't think about this before. Duan Lingtian sighed loudly when he thought about this. Let alone a royal grade spirit archery set, it looks like I won't even be able to make a quasi-royal grade spirit archery set before I find a suitable bowstring that fits. Duan Lingtian knew this very well. Where should I look for a suitable bowstring then? He was slightly desperate now. After a long time, Duan Lingtian calmed himself down and went to Hidden Fog City again. After searching through the entire Hidden Fog City, he still did not find any tendon from a demon beast that was above the Demon Monarch stage. There were many other body parts from demon beasts above the Demon Monarch stage in Hidden Fog City, but not every demon beasts had tendons in their bodies. It could only be the cow or dragon tendon. So far, he seemed to have only two choices. Maybe I should ask Brother Yang. At this moment, Duan Lingtian suddenly thought of Yang Wei, Martial Emperor Lingzan, the Martial Emperor who brought him to the Hidden Fog Island from Cloud Continent. The moment he thought of Yang Wei, he quickly rushed back to the southern island. With his current speed, he soon arrived at the place where Lingzan Peak's people had been staying. He instantly began to search for Yang Wei. Brother Lingtian, why you've broken through to the Martial Emperor stage? The instant Yang Wei laid eyes on Duan Lingtian, he immediately sensed the changes in Duan Lingtian. He was certain Duan Lingtian had broken through to the Martial Emperor stage. However, he was not completely certain. Although he was at the 4th level Martial Emperor stage and could roughly sense if a person was at the Martial Emperor stage or not, he was not 100% confident. Yang Wei was only certain when he saw Duan Lingtian nodding his head. He immediately congratulated Duan Lingtian. Congratulations, Brother Lingtian. Duan Lingtian nodded. Brother Lingtian, I didn't see you for a period of time, where have you been? Yang Wei asked. Previously, he had looked for Duan Lingtian multiple times, but he did not see him at all. I was with my 2 fiancés, Duan Lingtian said honestly. Fiancés. Moreover, you said 2 fiancés. Yang Wei was shocked. Brother Lingtian, since when do you have fiancés? Did you meet them here? Somebody from the Hidden Fog Island? No, Duan Lingtian shook his head. They're my fiancés and my childhood friends. It has been a long time since I last saw them. It did not cross my mind that I would be reunited with them on the Hidden Fog Island. Childhood friends. Yang Wei became even more shocked. He could also faintly guess what happened. Brother Lingtian, why you mean, your memory has returned? Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. Then, does this mean that, why you're originally from the Hidden Fog Island? Yang Wei asked again. In his opinion, since Duan Lingtian's childhood friends who were also his fiancés were both on the Hidden Fog Island, then it was very likely the 3 of them were from the Hidden Fog Island. As for how Duan Lingtian lost his memory and why he showed up on Cloud Continent, he had no explanation for that. Chapter 1282, I'm not from the Hidden Fog Island. Duan Lingtian shook his head. He understood why Yang Wei came to such a conclusion. He would have come to such a conclusion as well if he was Yang Wei. No, Yang Wei was stunned. He had a baffled expression on his face. Then your 2 fiancés. They came here to the Hidden Fog Island together with Martial Emperor Yuhan from Yuhan Valley, Duan Lingtian replied. Martial Emperor Yuhan, Yang Wei frowned. That crazy woman. Crazy woman, Duan Lingtian was astonished and puzzled. Why do you say that? Brother Lingtian, you don't know her, that Martial Emperor Yuhan is a hypocrite. It's said that more than several dozens years ago, she did not even spare her twin sister in order to obtain the position of Valley Master of Yuhan Valley. The reason she did that was due to her sister's innate ability being better than hers and was supposed to become the successor of the Valley Master of Yuhan Valley. After she had killed her own blood sister, she successfully became the successor of the Valley Master of Yuhan Valley. 20 years ago, the former Valley Master of Yuhan Valley finally died, paving the way for her to become the new Valley Master of Yuhan Valley, Yang Wei explained. Are all these true? Duan Lingtian's face turned slightly glum as he tried to affirm it. Yang Wei nodded without any hesitation as he continued to talk freely and frankly. This is not a secret to the group of martial emperors and demon emperors on Cloud Continent. She killed her own twin sister. Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes, and his face turned even glummer. Although he had a feeling Martial Emperor Yuhan had an ulterior motive for taking Kaye and Li Fei as her direct disciples, he did not expect her to be a lunatic to the extent she even killed her own twin sister. Was there anything a woman like her could not do? Still, you don't have to worry, Brother Lingtian, as far as I know, although that Martial Emperor Yuhan is crazy, she's usually very good to her direct disciples and doesn't mistreat them. Since your 2 fiancés managed to become her direct disciples, I believe their innate abilities and comprehension abilities must be more or less similar to yours. Since there's no conflict of interest, I'm sure Martial Emperor Yuhan doesn't harbor any ill intention toward them, Yang Wei quickly reassured Duan Lingtian when he saw he had instantly turned glum. Duan Lingtian nodded. Although his face became less tensed, it felt like his heart had sunk into a bottomless abyss. Martial Emperor Yuhan might have a conflict of interest with his 2 fiancés. That conflict might stem from him. Or to be more precise, from the rebirth Martial Emperor. He had long suspected Martial Emperor Yuhan knew about the existence of the rebirth Martial Emperor and some of the things regarding him from the legacy passed down from Martial Emperor Han Bing of Yuhan Valley. The 3 lives rebirth technique that the rebirth Martial Emperor cultivated was not a secret to the Martial Emperors and Demon Emperors on Cloud Continent more than 20,000 years ago. That Martial Emperor Han Bing, in particular, knew the 3 lives rebirth technique that the rebirth Martial Emperor cultivated very well. This was also one of the reasons she made a bet with the rebirth Martial Emperor. At that time, the stake was the rebirth Martial Emperor had to teach her the 3 lives rebirth technique if he lost. If she lost, she would have to pass the Han Bing's divine sword technique to the rebirth Martial Emperor. In the end, she lost and had to fulfill her promise. Duan Lingtian learned about all these from the rebirth Martial Emperor's memory. If my speculation is true, that Martial Emperor Han Bing is really a troublemaker. Duan Lingtian scolded inwardly. If Martial Emperor Han Bing had somehow disclosed the 3 lives rebirth technique that the rebirth Martial Emperor cultivated to her successors through some methods, then, that Valley Master of Yuhan Valley, Martial Emperor Yuhan, as one of her successors must have known about the 3 lives rebirth technique that the rebirth Martial Emperor cultivated and the profound secret behind it. Perhaps, she's already ascertained that I'm the third reincarnation of the rebirth Martial Emperor through the message that Martial Emperor Han Bing left behind, and that I was the one who taught the Han Bing's divine sword technique to Ka. Otherwise, with the innate abilities and the comprehension abilities that Ka and Little Fair possessed, she would not have noticed them at all, let alone allowing them to become her direct disciples. She's definitely scheming. If Duan Lingtian felt uncertain previously, he was now completely certain. That Martial Emperor Yuhan was definitely concocting a plot. Brother Lingtian, where are your two fiancés? Have they returned to Martial Emperor Yuhan? Why didn't you bring them here for me to see? Yang Wei asked when he saw Duan Lingtian lost in his thoughts. Yang Hui's words snapped Duan Lingtian back to reality. He shook his head. They're cultivating. Oh, that's right. Soon after, Duan Lingtian shifted back to the main issue. Brother Yang, do you know where can I find a worm dragon? Worm dragon. Yang Wei was a little astonished when he heard this. Naturally, he knew what worm dragons were. Brother Lingtian, why are you looking for a worm dragon? I need a dragon tendon, Duan Lingtian said honestly. Dragon tendon. The moment Duan Lingtian's words left his mouth, the corner of Yang Hui's mouth twitched subtly. If a worm dragon was stripped of its dragon tendon, it would be crippled. For a worm dragon, the dragon tendon was equivalent to a human's spine. It was extremely vital. A human without a spine would be paralyzed and crippled. Due to this reason, there was only one choice if one wanted the dragon tendon of a worm dragon, and that was to kill it. There was no other way apart from this. Brother Lingtian, I've only heard of people encountering the worm dragons, and I've yet to see one myself. However, I'm certain that there must be a worm dragon somewhere in the deep sea. When Yang Wei reached the end of his sentence, his gaze burned as he looked to the south. At this moment, he was at the southern island of the Hidden Fog Island. The southern sea region was outside of the Hidden Fog Island's boundary. If one wanted to return to Cloud Continent, one would have to cross this sea region. Duan Lingtian looked at Yang Wei. I heard many people had encountered worm dragons in the sea on the way to the Hidden Fog Island from Cloud Continent. That's right, Brother Lingtian, you're looking for a dragon tendon, right? Yang Wei said calmly. However, when he reached the end of his sentence, his eyes narrowed as though he had just recalled something, and he asked again for confirmation. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. Brother Lingtian, I know a martial emperor on Cloud Continent who once killed a second-level martial emperor stage worm dragon. I wonder if he still has the dragon tendon with him, Yang Wei explained. Although the worm dragon was the lowest level dragon, it was still a half-dragon no matter what. Due to this reason, its entire body was a treasure. Most ordinary people would keep its body. At this moment, what Yang Wei was worried about the most was if the dragon tendon was no longer in the hand of that martial emperor. Is he coming to the Hidden Fog Island? Duan Lingtian asked urgently as his eyes shone. Since he was presented with an opportunity to obtain a dragon tendon, he would not let it slip away no matter how small the chance was. Only after he obtained the dragon tendon would he have a suitable bowstring for his royal grade spirit archery set. At that time, he could finally cultivate the Saint-grade martial tactic, Colossal Arrow Light Arrow. Ever since he had learned about the almighty force of the Saint-grade martial tactic from Wang Ba, he was eager to cultivate the Colossal Arrow Light Arrow. He's here. He came to look for me just 2 weeks ago. Yang Wei nodded. That martial emperor could be considered as his friend. The moment Yang Hui's words left his mouth, Duan Lingtian said urgently, let's go find him then. It was as though he was afraid someone would take the dragon tendon away from that martial emperor. All right, Yang Wei could clearly sense Duan Lingtian's urgency. Without wasting any more time, he brought Duan Lingtian and left the residence that the Hidden Fog Island prepared for Lingzan Peak. Yang Wei and Duan Lingtian headed south in a straight line. When they were approaching the sea region of the Hidden Fog Island's southern island, Yang Wei slowed his speed. Duan Lingtian saw a residence along the coast, and he could not help but ask, that's where he's staying. To be more precise, it's the place where he and the people he brought are staying, Yang Wei replied. Soon after, under Yang Hui's guidance, Duan Lingtian saw the martial emperor that Yang Wei told him about. He was an old man who was over 70 years old with white hair and white eyebrows. Although the old man appeared old, he was fit and had a ruddy complexion. His eyes, in particular, shone like stars in the night sky. Behind that old man was a bald middle-aged man who was clad in tiger skin. When he stood there, he looked like a guardian of the door. His face had a look that could hold back the entire enemy's force. Yang Wei, we just met 2 weeks ago, is there a reason why you came to look for me? The old man asked. His eyes twinkled as he looked at Yang Wei. Dong Chu, indeed I do have a reason for coming to look for you, however, before we get to the main topic, let me first introduce this little brother of mine to you, Yang Wei replied before looking at Duan Lingtian who was by his side, this is brother Lingtian. After introducing Duan Lingtian to Dong Chu, Martial Emperor Chu Li, he explained to Duan Lingtian, brother Lingtian, this is Dong Chu. He's also a well-known martial emperor on Cloud Continent. His honorific title is Chu Li, Martial Emperor Chu Li. Upon hearing this, Duan Lingtian nodded his head at Dong Chu as a greeting. However, Dong Chu did not seem to have any intention of greeting him. Instead, he sized him up from top to bottom before saying nonchalantly, Yang Wei, I thought he's your new direct disciple, I didn't think he would be a friend of yours. Dong Chu, although brother Lingtian is not my direct disciple, the reason he made a trip to the Hidden Fog Island this time is to represent our Lingzan Peak and join the Hidden Fog martial competition, Yang Wei replied. Oh, Yang Hui's words began to rouse Dong Chu's interest. After studying him a little bit more, his eyes suddenly lit up. Martial Emperor stage. Duan Lingtian nodded. Yang Wei, I originally thought only Zhou Di alone is at the Martial Emperor stage among the 10 people you brought from Lingzan Peak to join the Hidden Fog martial competition. I can't believe you actually hid your light under the bushel and found another Martial Emperor, Dong Chu mused. Chapter 1283. Upon hearing Dong Chu's words, Yang Wei could not help but preen his feathers proudly. HMPH. Even the Martial Emperor stage is separated into many levels. Right at this moment, he emitted a low grunt. The voice was filled with disdain and the proud smile that had just appeared on Yang Hui's face froze right away. Yang Hui's gaze instantly landed on the bald, middle-aged man who was clad in a tiger pelt behind Dong Chu right away. He was the one who had made the remark earlier. Standing there, the bald man was glaring at Duan Lingtian with scorn in his eyes. Dong Chu, it looks like Little Who is terribly confident in his own abilities. Yang Wei did not get riled up. Instead, he looked at Dong Chu with a smirk. Little Who. Upon hearing the nickname Yang Wei called the bald, middle-aged man, a twitch appeared in the corner of Duan Lingtian's mouth immediately. Then, he completely ignored the contemptuous glare of the bald man and started to study him instead. The man had a huge build and was about 2 meters tall with a slipshod demeanor. Yet, such a huge-sized middle-aged man was called Little Who. Somehow, a grin crept upon the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth. What are you smiling at? The moment the bald man who kept glaring at Duan Lingtian noticed his smirk, he snarled loudly instantly. In the next second, a chilling gaze shot out of his eyes. He seemed to have transformed into a hungry tiger that could pounce on Duan Lingtian anytime before killing and swallowing him. Dong Hu. Finally, Dong Chu opened his mouth and with a sharp tone, he snapped at the bald, middle-aged man, haven't you heard your junior uncle? Duan Lingtian is his friend. Apologize now. Unless he can defeat me, otherwise, I won't apologize. However, Dong Hu refused to listen. Just as Dong Chu's face turned grave, Yang Wei smiled faintly and took the initiative to reassure him. Big brother Chu, as Little Who's master and adoptive father, you watched him growing up and you still don't know his temper. What a misfortune, I'm telling you. Dong Chu shook his head while sighing. A look of helplessness rose up in his eyes. Then, Dong Chu changed the topic. Younger brother Wei, you didn't come to find me just to introduce brother Lingtian to me, did you? Big brother Chu, I came to find you now about the worm dragon that you killed the last time. Yang Wei stated his purpose of coming and asked at the same time, I wonder whether the dragon tendon is still with you or not. Dragon tendon. Dong Chu was stunned at first. Then, raising his hand, a long strip that looked like a cow's tendon appeared in his hand. It was entirely crimson in color, simple and unadorned. The dragon tendon. The moment Duan Lingtian saw the strip, his eyes brightened up right away. A glow of delight lit his face up instantly. In just one glance, he could tell that this was the dragon tendon. According to the Rebirth Martial Emperor's memory, he's seen the dragon tendon once, but that particular tendon belonged to a demon monarch stage worm dragon. Although it looks identical to this dragon tendon, its quality is completely different. Because the Rebirth Martial Emperor had seen the dragon tendon before, Duan Lingtian could immediately distinguish that what Dong Chu was holding was a dragon tendon. It was the very dragon tendon that he itched to get his hands on. To be honest, despite looking for Dong Chu the Martial Emperor Chu Li there with Yang Wei, he did not get his hopes of obtaining the dragon tendon up too high. However, it had never crossed his mind that Dong Chu really had the dragon tendon with him and would actually take it out. Big brother Chu, can you give this dragon tendon to me? Yang Hui's eyes lit up as he directly asked Dong Chu. Just name your price. We're brothers, so don't you think you're treating me like a stranger by saying those words? I don't have any use for this dragon tendon at all. Since you want it, I can just Dong Chu was just about to say that he was going to bestow this dragon tendon to Yang Wei, but before he could finish, he was already cut off by Dong Hu from behind. Junior Uncle Yang Wei, you may take this dragon tendon, but you must promise me that you'll let me have one round of match with him first. Dong Hu told Yang Wei before staring at Duan Lingtian with his eyes gleaming brightly. If I'm not mistaken, the reason Junior Uncle Yang Wei came here to ask for the dragon tendon is for your sake, wasn't it? You're smart. Looking at Dong Hu, Duan Lingtian was a little surprised. He did not expect that the ruddy-looking Dong Hu would actually have such fine observation skills. HMPH. Unless you can defeat me, don't even think of taking that dragon tendon away. Dong Hu snorted. His words were full of threat. Are you sure you're the decision maker? Duan Lingtian chuckled with a dazzling smile. Dong Hu. Right at this moment, Dong Chu, who had returned to his senses, snapped loudly with a grave expression. His tone was filled with anger. Big brother Chu, calm down. Don't let the rage get to you. As Yang Wei reassured Dong Chu, he looked at Duan Lingtian again. Brother Lingtian, since Little Hu wants to have a round with you, just accompany him for a while, will you? Then, he continued to tell Duan Lingtian via voice transmission, Little Hu has always possessed a great innate ability, but he has never experienced any hardship in his life before. For this reason, his personality is already like that and he considers everything and everyone beneath him. If it's possible, help us teach him a lesson, would you? Upon hearing Yang Hui's words, Duan Lingtian nodded his head. The purple robe around his body fluttered loudly in the wind. Since you want to have a go with me, let's do that then. Duan Lingtian looked at Dong Hu and announced nonchalantly, however, don't cry when you lose, okay, Little Hu. Little Hu. Duan Lingtian followed Yang Hui's way of addressing him. The moment Dong Hu heard how Duan Lingtian mocked him, his face turned sour right away. Origin energy soared from his body and caused a vacuum in the surrounding air. In Dong Hu's opinion, the nickname, Little Hu, was not something just anybody could call him. Only Yang Wei could call him that because he was his senior. Long ago, when his master and Yang Wei were not martial emperors yet and he was still a little kid, he had already come to know Yang Wei and had been calling him, Uncle. Yang Wei was at least a decade older than him. Right now, because he did not deliberately take care of his looks, he appeared to be much older than Yang Wei. Since you want to seek for death, I'll fulfill your wish then. I won't have mercy on you just for Uncle Yang Hui's sake. If you can't even defeat me, you're unworthy to become Uncle Yang Hui's friend. Dong Hu snorted as the origin energy from his body blasted out before changing into a multicolored energy. It appeared that he had connected and demonstrated the various profundities that he comprehended. Besides that, the moment his full energy was unleashed, a gigantic axe appeared in his hand too. Whoosh! For such a heavy-set guy, Dong Hu's speed was not slow at all. Despite the burden of his body, it did not seem to affect him at all. In the flash of an eye, he seemed to have transformed into a lightning bolt that charged at Duan Lingtian. Boom, 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 comma. The area where Dong Hu passed through set off a series of violent and ear-deafening detonations that were thunderous, wreaking havoc on one's heart. From the very beginning till the end, Yang Wei merely stood by the side watching quietly. After Yang Wei had openly given his permission, Dong Chu did not stop Dong Hu anymore. Of course, it was not only because of Yang Hui's decision, but he was more interested in seeing just how powerful this young man Yang Wei regarded as a friend. Even though a person who was above the martial monarch stage could always retain his youthful vitality, only someone below 70 years old could join the hidden fog martial emperor. For this very reason, he was certain that this youthful-looking man was not young at all. Huh, isn't he going to dodge? Very soon, Dong Chu's eyes narrowed right away when he saw that Duan Lingtian was still standing rooted in the same spot even when he faced Dong Hu, who was attacking him at full force with his spirit weapon. It was like he was waiting for Dong Hu to assault him. What's he trying to do? He can't dodge in time. Or is he stunned by my attack? Or is he, right at the moment when Dong Chu's mind was flooded with all the possibilities? Whoosh! Dong Hu arrived in front of Duan Lingtian. With a flicker of the gigantic axe in his hand, a series of thunderous explosions were set off before he brought the axe down directly toward Duan Lingtian's head. Die! Dong Hu's eyes were gleaming brilliantly with a cold gaze. Without showing any mercy, his axe heaved down in an imposing manner just like how God created the world. As Dong Hu's axe came down on him with full fury, Duan Lingtian could clearly sense the sharp aura that was racing towards him. If he really was maimed by Dong Hu's axe, he would definitely be hacked into two. He had no doubt about that. At this second, Duan Lingtian's robe was fluttering loudly in the wind behind his body as though a hurricane was whipping at it. Seeing how the gigantic axe in Dong Hu's hand just a foot away from Duan Lingtian, Yang Wei could not help but frown right away. He could not tell what he intended to do. Nevertheless, he had always been confident in Duan Lingtian's strength. In fact, before Duan Lingtian made a breakthrough to the martial emperor stage, his strength was already greater than his first direct disciple, Zhou Di's, who was already at the first-level martial emperor stage. Now, Duan Lingtian's cultivation base had taken a great stride forward and broken through to the martial emperor stage in one fell swoop. His strength must have been further elevated as well. Even though Dong Hu was one of the best among all the first-level martial emperors with a strength that far surpassed his first direct disciple, Zhou Di's, he did not think that it would be possible for Dong Hu to defeat Duan Lingtian. However, in the face of the critical moment then, even he itched for him to make his move now before everything was too late. By then, Duan Lingtian would definitely be hacked into two. Stop! Just as Yang Wei was about to make his final move, Dong Chu shouted out loudly as he advanced forward too. However, the very moment when he just made his move, he seemed to notice something as he suddenly came to a halt before looking stunned at the scene in the distance with his mouth agape. It was as though he had witnessed something very appalling. At the same time, Yang Hui's body came to a halt too. In the distance, the gigantic axe in Dong Hu's hand had indeed landed, but not on Duan Lingtian. Instead, it landed on the sharp arrow that suddenly appeared in Duan Lingtian's hand. Clang! Almost at that instant when the gigantic axe and the sharp arrow clashed, a deafening racket echoed in the air. In the next second, a small mushroom cloud appeared from the epicenter of the impact between the two of them. A horrifying impact wave started to sweep out at once. Chapter 1284. Boom, 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 boom. Wherever the impact wave swept past, the air was crushed to its maximum pressure. Seeing how everything in the surrounding was about to be turned into ashes, Dong Chu and Yang Wei began to make their moves. With the touch of the two martial emperors, they easily protected everything in the surroundings, including the mansion that Dong Chu was staying at, the residence that Hidden Fog Island prepared for them. Chu Li Mountain. Chu Li Mountain was Dong Chu's cultivation place. Even though Dong Chu and Yang Wei managed to react in time and avoid the tragedy of everything in the surroundings from turning into ashes, the commotion that was caused by the spreading of the impact wave still alerted the other martial emperor's disciples from the Chu Li Mountain. 9 figures soared up to the sky one by one and hovered in the sky as they looked at the epicenter of the impact wave in the distance. It's senior brother Dong Hu. Soon, somebody noticed Dong Hu. Who was that purple-clad young man? He could actually come to a draw with senior brother Dong Hu. Somebody noticed Duan Lingtian as well. No, it's not a draw. A few of them who had 20/20 eyesight seemed to notice something as they shook their heads. Duan Lingtian stood at the same spot after casually taking out his royal grade spirit sharp arrow and blocking Dong Hu's fully exerted attack easily. He looked mockingly at Dong Hu, whose face was completely enraged and red. Do you only have such little strength? Provoked by Duan Lingtian, he shouted out loud without warning. A vast energy skyrocketed from the gigantic axe in his hand. Unfortunately, his strength still did not seem to be able to move the sharp arrow in Duan Lingtian's hand at all. The enormous strength was like a pebble that was dropped in the sea. It's an end, Duan Lingtian announced nonchalantly with a calm look on. His hand started to make his move. With a flicker of the sharp arrow in his hand, the 5 colored flames running amok on his body suddenly transformed into the shape of a sword before clashing with Dong Hu as though the sword had come out of his body. Bang! A loud bang resonated and Dong Hu's body trembled before being sent flying unexpectedly by the strength that swept out of Duan Lingtian's body. Spurt, barf, as the impact wave swept out to the surrounding once again, the surrounding crowds only saw Dong Hu, who was sent flying up to 100 meters away like an arrow that had left the bow. All the way, he was gushing out blood continuously in a wretched manner. As for the other person involved, he was standing right there unmoving like a mountain. He did not budge at all from the beginning till the end. How strong! The crowds of Chu Li Mountain's disciples shifted their gaze towards Duan Ling Tian. With a narrow of their eyes, their hearts were filled with bewilderment. Dong Hu was the strongest person among the Chu Li Mountain's disciples. Still, such a person had actually been defeated by this strange purple-clad young man. Not only that he was lost in a dexterous way. He has already shown some mercy. Many people could tell this. That guy seems to be Martial Emperor Ling Zan. Very soon, another direct disciple of Dong Chu immediately recognized Yang Wei, who was standing together with Dong Chu not far away. Before Yang Wei and Dong Chu made a breakthrough to the Martial Emperor stage, they had already been friends for many years. After they had both made a breakthrough to the Martial Emperor stage and became well-known Martial Emperors in the Cloud Continent, the friendship between the both of them still remained, and they always dropped by at each other's place for a visit. All the direct disciples under their commands were no stranger to them both. He's Martial Emperor Ling Zan. Then, does this mean that the purple-clad young man is his first direct disciple, Zhou Di? I've long heard before that there's a direct disciple under Martial Emperor Ling Zan who's also a Martial Emperor too. Many Chu Li Mountain's disciples whispered to one another. He's not Zhou Di. I've seen Zhou Di before and that's not him. Not only that, as far as I know, Zhou Di is no match for senior brother Dong Hu at all. One of the Chu Li Mountain's disciples shook his head. As one of the Martial Emperor's direct disciples under the commanding of Martial Emperor Chu Li, of course, he knew much more than the others. He isn't Zhou Di. Then, he might be a new disciple that Martial Emperor Ling Zan took in, speculated many people by themselves. Haha, brother Ling Tian, you're amazing. Right at this moment, Dong Chu laughed out loudly and was not unhappy seeing Dong Hu being defeated by Duan Ling Tian. Not only that, there was a hint of joy in the depth of his eyes as well. It was as though he was happy that Duan Ling Tian defeated Dong Hu. Dong Hu was too proud, so he had long hoped to subdue his arrogance a little. This time, Duan Ling Tian had done a favor for him. You flatter me, Martial Emperor Chu Li. Right at this moment, Duan Ling Tian returned to Yang Hui's side and nodded at Dong Chu before responding humbly, Little Hu, you've learned your lesson right, haven't you? Looking at Dong Hu, whose injury had made excellent progress after he had consumed a healing medicinal pill, Yang Wei smiled mockingly as he asked. Humph. Upon hearing Yang Hui's mock, Dong Hu grunted in a low voice and returned to stand behind Dong Chu's back obediently again. The gaze that he looked towards Duan Ling Tian again was now filled with hints of dread. There was still a lingering fear in his heart. Right at this moment, Duan Ling Tian returned to Yang Hui's side and nodded at Dong Chu before responding humbly, Little Hu, you've learned your lesson right, haven't you? At first, he was unhappy that Yang Wei regarded Duan Ling Tian as a friend and he, on the other hand, was a level lower than them in seniority, so he purposely wanted to provoke the recipient. He wanted to defeat Duan Ling Tian and prove that he was not worthy to become Yang Hui's friend. Who would have expected that despite being full of confidence, he would be defeated in just one blow? Not only that, he could feel that this guy had already shown some mercy on him, otherwise, he would have to long be dead. Brother Ling Tian. Right at this moment, Yang Wei passed the dragon tendon that Dong Chu had passed to him some time ago to Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian raised a hand to take it and his feelings were in a turmoil now. The dragon tendon of a second-level Martial Emperor stage worm dragon. Soon, clasping the dragon tendon with both of his hands, he stretched it with all his might, as though he wanted to make it snap. However, no matter how the sword-shaped flames rose from his body and how he exerted his full strength, the dragon tendon was only stretched a little longer than before. It simply could not be snapped into two at all. Brother Ling Tian, this dragon tendon comes from a Martial Emperor stage worm dragon, so its tenacity is extremely strong. Let alone you, even I wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Dong Chu, who saw Duan Ling Tian's movement, could not help but chuckle. That's right, Brother Ling Tian, it's said that the dragon tendon from a Demon Emperor stage worm dragon won't even able to snap a person who is at the peak of the Martial Emperor stage into two, Yang Wei added by the side. Sheena, before this they keep saying Martial Emperor stage worm dragon, but now it suddenly becomes Demon Emperor stage. Duan Ling Tian nodded, but he could not control the joy that crept upon his face. If he used such a dragon tendon on the Royal Grade Spirit archery set that he had long prepared, the archery set that was at the Royal Grade Spirit weapon level would be born right away. In the Dao Martial Saint land, the archery set that was at the royal grade spirit weapon level would also be called a saint weapon. With a saint weapon, I'd be able to cultivate the saint grade martial tactic colossal arrow light arrow right away. Duan Lingtian's heart was elated with delight. At once, he itched to return home as fast as an arrow. After bidding his goodbye to Yang Wei and Dong Chu, he hastily left right away. Of course, he did not return to the residential area where the Lingzhan Peak people stayed. Instead, he went back to the wooden house by the northeast of the hidden fog island to take care of the two girls and study the saint grade martial tactic, the colossal arrow light arrow, at the same time. He had long memorized the colossal arrow light arrow in his mind and was not able to forget it. This was a peculiar ability that was gifted to him by his soul. He only needed to infuse his spiritual energy into the saint token that contained the saint grade martial tactic, and he could immediately memorize the tactic in the saint token directly. Ordinary people would not be able to do that. The colossal arrow light arrow was an arrow technique that had an extremely high requirement of the user's basic technique. Firstly, he would have to master his aim. However, this was not difficult for Duan Lingtian. In his previous reincarnation, he was the strongest weapons specialist on Earth. Although he had never used such an ancient long-range weapon like the bow and arrow before, he was not unfamiliar with all the other various firearms. Not only that, in his previous reincarnation, he had practiced his marksmanship to the highest level. He could easily blast open his target's head with just one shot from several hundred meters away without any aiming device. For this reason, having long excelled in his marksmanship, it would not be difficult to train in the aiming of the bow and arrow. Just within a day and a night, he had trained himself to hit the target every time without missing. In this reincarnation, Duan Lingtian was a born archer. Early morning the next day when the first sun rays hit the ground, the fresh air made Duan Lingtian shut his eyes in comfort. Although he had not slept for a day and a night, he did not feel any sense of exhaustion at all. When a person reached the cultivation base level that was the same as his, he would barely feel tired even if he did not sleep for a month. Of course, this was only limited to the physical body. His heart would still more or less feel tired. Suddenly, as though noticing something, Duan Lingtian raised a brow and looked at the sky instantly. A group of seabirds was flying in the sky. Whoosh! As the purple robe on his body fluttered, a bow appeared in his hand out of thin air. This bow was entirely black like ink. It was so black that one would lose themselves in it if they looked at it. It was like a deep bottomless abyss. There was also a crimson-red bowstring on the bow. The bowstring was as thick as an adult man's thumb. They were the highest quality of art as they matched perfectly with the black bow. Holding onto the bow with his left hand, he aimed at the group of seabirds that were flying across the sky. Somehow, his right hand was already placed near to the bow. The moment his hand reached the bow, an arrow appeared in his hand. That arrow was also entirely black just like the bow itself. The arrowhead was sharp as it gleamed with a cold brilliance as if it was able to pierce through everything. Creak, creak. Somehow, the arrow in Duan Lingtian's right hand was already placed on the bow. As milky white flames soared up from the right hand that was holding onto the arrow, the bowstring was stretched, but it was not stretched too far behind. Duan Lingtian did not intend to do that on purpose, but with just his origin energy alone, he could not pull this bow much further. This bow was not an ordinary bow. Casting aside all the others, just the bowstring itself was already a dragon tendon from a second-level martial emperor stage worm dragon. It was said that it was an item that not even a powerhouse at the peak of the martial emperor stage could snap into two. He was just at the first-level martial emperor stage, so it was already considered quite decent for being able to pull it apart slightly with just his origin energy alone. Let's start. With his heart racing, Duan Lingtian locked his sights on the group of seabirds that were flying across the sky. The seabirds flew in their flock leisurely, completely not noticing the danger ahead. 1 bird, 2 birds, 3 birds, go. At that instance, with a jolt in his mind, Duan Lingtian's right hand that was holding onto the arrow released his grip and allowed the arrow to be shot out. Whoosh! In the span of a lightning bolt, within his sights, the arrow that he shot out transformed into a lightning that swept towards the sky before hitting and piercing through a seabird. After 1 bird was pierced through, the arrow continued to sweep out and pierce the 2nd bird. Then, the 3rd bird was shot as well. Chapter 1285. Killing 3 seabirds with a bolt of lightning. Duan Lingtian had just literally carried out the saying, killing 3 birds with 1 arrow. If anyone who was skilled in using a longbow saw such archery skill, he would definitely be taken by shock. The group of seabirds flying across the sky had initially been moving swiftly. One had to possess advanced archery skills to kill one of them using just a bow and arrow. If one wanted to kill two birds with one arrow, other than having advanced archery skills, one had to possess strong observation and judgment skills as well. Only then could one kill two seabirds with one arrow. The requirement would be even higher in the case of killing three birds with one arrow. The chance of the three swift-moving seabirds forming a straight line would happen in the blink of an eye. Killing three of them in one shot in just that blink of an eye would no doubt be even more difficult. It would be far greater than the challenge of killing two birds with one arrow. Dragon soaring the nine heavens. Somehow, Duan Lingtian's body charged out and seemed to have transformed into a divine dragon that soared through the nine heavens. As he suddenly came to a halt, the bodies of the three seabirds appeared in front of him and hovered in the air as they were lifted by an invisible energy that allowed him to study them. Darn, I missed a little. After glancing at the three dead seabirds, Duan Lingtian seemed to have noticed something. With a shake of his head, he sighed regrettably. The reason he sighed was how the three birds had died. Two of the birds had their left eyes pierced while the last had its throat stabbed. His lament about missing his mark a little was due to how the last seabird had died differently from the first two. When Duan Lingtian first made his move earlier, he originally wanted to pierce through the three seabirds' left eyes and kill them with one arrow. Right now, although they were dead, the cause of death of one of the seabird was very different from what he had previously imagined. For this very reason, he was very unsatisfied. If someone else had been there, he would be rendered speechless after knowing what was going through Duan Lingtian's mind right then. Being able to hone his archery skills to such a level in just the span of a day could be deemed utterly shocking. Yet, he was still unsatisfied. Was that not a little too much? Of course, this was also because nobody knew about Duan Lingtian's past. Had they known about the life of Duan Lingtian's past reincarnation on Earth as a weapons specialist, they would not have thoughts like that at all. During his past reincarnation, his marksmanship was the best in the entire planet Earth. The meaning of the 6 words, the strongest weapons specialist on Earth, was in no way a joke. Other than having a horrifying personal combat ability, Duan Lingtian's marksmanship was also now at a level that would make anyone panic-stricken if they heard about it. For this reason, Duan Lingtian had really high expectations of himself. The archery set is still a little behind the firearms. If it were the firearms that I used on Earth, I'd have faith in piercing their left eyes in one shot as long as the force is strong enough, Duan Lingtian thought to himself as his heartbeat quickened. However, he was not dejected because of that. Quickly, he submerged himself in cultivating his archery skill again until he forgot about the time. Another day passed. Again, he attempted shooting 3 birds with 1 arrow. However, this time, he precisely shot the 3 seabirds, left eyes with 1 arrow and completed the mission that he had set for himself. Ever since then, Duan Lingtian had completely mastered his archery skill. Right now, it's time for me officially cultivate the colossal arrow-light arrow. The moment he thought of this, his feelings turned into turmoil right away. However, before that, he suddenly recalled something. Bastard, is there any particular thing that I need to pay attention to when I cultivate the Saint-grade martial tactic? Opening his mouth suddenly, Duan Lingtian asked Wang Ba, or to be more precise, Wang Ba's soul, who had been residing in his body. Wang Ba said that he used to be a Saint-stage powerhouse in the Dao martial Saint land. Therefore, he had tons of questions to ask Wang Ba since it was his first time cultivating the Saint-grade martial tactic. However, Wang Ba did not respond. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Soon, as a light bulb went off in Duan Lingtian's mind, he suddenly seemed to recall something. At the same time, with a jolt, the vast spiritual energy that gathered quietly deep in his mind suddenly became agitated. Boy, do you want to squeeze me to death? Just as the spiritual energy spread out according to Duan Lingtian's control, an exasperated voice entered his ears right away. It was Wang Ba. I'm letting you out now, aren't I? Duan Lingtian replied nonchalantly. Boy, don't you think you owe me an explanation? Where's the respect for my dignity here by just sealing me off using your spiritual energy without any reason? Wang Ba scoffed in a deep voice. Dignity. Duan Lingtian's expression remained unchanged as he asked calmly, do you still even have that now? Anyway, don't tell me that you don't even know why I used my spiritual energy to seal you off in the first place. HMPH. Wang Ba snorted coldly, boy, you underestimate me too much. I've lived for so many years and what kind of woman haven't I seen before? Do you really think I'd take a peek at you and those two girls having sex? Wang Ba still clearly remembered that the last time when he was sealed by Duan Lingtian using his spiritual energy, it had been in that wooden house that he had built together with the two girls nearby. As for the reason why he had done so, well, having gone through a lot in his life, he could easily guess the reason. It was none other than worrying that he would take a peek at their sexual lives. Who knows? Duan Lingtian answered nonchalantly, you said so yourself before, you're a devil cultivator. Just the name, devil cultivator, doesn't sound that pleasant already. Upon hearing this, Wang Ba became enraged immediately. Better be mentally prepared, in the future, I'll still use my spiritual energy to seal your soul off if there's a need, Duan Lingtian continued. He did not want Wang Ba to watch the fun when he was having sex with the two girls. Perhaps, Wang Ba might have been a saint stage powerhouse once, but right then, his soul that was lodging in his body was extremely weak. Duan Lingtian could easily use his spiritual energy that had reached the martial emperor stage to suppress it. Boy, you'll come to regret it, how dare you treat a saint stage powerhouse like that? Wang Ba's tone was full of dissatisfaction. Keep talking and I'll seal you off now. Duan Lingtian threatened Wang Ba, causing him not to dare to say a single word more. As the saying went, one must bow down to circumstances. He had no choice but to swallow the humiliation silently. Soon, Duan Lingtian recalled the main objective and asked, oh yeah, the reason I let you out is to ask you if there's anything that I should pay attention to when I cultivate the saint-grade martial tactic. Just like that, with Wang Ba's help, he began to cultivate the saint-grade martial tactic Colossal Arrow Light Arrow officially and got ready to attend the Hidden Fog martial competition that was about to come. Of course, in this period of time, he had done some other things as well, such as refining pills. Or to be more precise, using the Demon Emperor's Beast Core to refine pills. Other than the Stygian Scale Bear's Beast Core that he had obtained the last time, he had also purposely gone to search for a few live targets in the sea when he was cultivating the Colossal Arrow Light Arrow. Because of that, he had obtained a few other Demon Emperor's Beast Cores. To him, there was not much difficulty in refining the pills using the Demon Emperor's Beast Cores. Furthermore, the pill forming rate was pretty high too. However, due to the reason that those Demon Emperors that he killed were of a lower level, the pills made from their Beast Cores did not provide him much elevation in his cultivation base. However, despite that, they did indeed bring great improvement to Li Fei and Ka. The Demon Emperor's Beast Core was originally the crystallization of the Demon Emperor's entire origin energy. After Duan Lingtian had refined them into pills, the medicinal efficacy became easy to be absorbed. Therefore, the cultivation base of the two girls improved rapidly as they advanced at a tremendous pace before the Hidden Fog martial competition took place. As the Hidden Fog martial competition was getting near, the atmosphere on the Hidden Fog Island started to change too. On the southern island, a person appeared on top of a spacious mansion and was glaring intensely at a woman waiting there before asking in a deep voice, are those two girls still not yet back? Yes, they aren't back yet. The woman nodded. She was none other than Shu Rong, Yuhan Valley's first senior sister. As for the other person who had asked her in the deep voice, it was none other than Martial Emperor Yuhan. It looks like the two girls seem to have forgotten about me after they have their fiancé. As Martial Emperor Yuhan reached the end of her sentence, her voice turned cold right away. At the same time, a sharp ray gleamed deep in her eyes. The Hidden Fog martial competition will start in another 10 days, and they're actually not back yet. Frowning, Shu Rong asked, Master, should I go look for them? Go, Martial Emperor Yuhan nodded. Immediately, Shu Rong proceeded to leave. As though she had transformed into lightning, she disappeared before the eyes of Martial Emperor Yuhan after burying herself in the fog not far away. 7 days later, at the mansion that the Lingzan Peak people were staying. Why isn't Brother Lingtian back yet? There are only 3 days left before the Hidden Fog martial competition officially starts. Yang Wei, Martial Emperor Lingzan, who found out that Duan Lingtian was still not back yet, frowned slightly. I wonder where he's gone. Had I known about this earlier, I should have asked where he was heading to when he left after he took that dragon tendon. Now, just great, I can't find him at all. Yang Wei felt helpless. Master, there are 3 days more, Junior Uncle Duan will definitely be back, Zhou Di reassured from behind Yang Wei. After knowing that Duan Lingtian had severely injured and defeated Dong Hu from Chuli Mountain in just one blow, Zhou Di, who was the Martial Emperor's first direct disciple under Yang Hui's command, had another new perspective of him. At the same time, since his master had called Duan Ling Tian brother, he viewed Duan Ling Tian as his senior uncle. Hopefully, upon hearing Zhou Di's reassurance, Yang Wei nodded. 1 day, 2 days, another 2 days had gone by. Tomorrow would be when the Hidden Fog martial competition by the Hidden Fog Island started. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 3 swift figures swept out from the northeast of the Hidden Fog Island, and not long after that, they arrived at the southern island and continued to head toward a particular direction at a breakneck speed. Soon, 3 people appeared before a spacious mansion. Junior Uncle Duan, you're finally back. The moment the 3 of them had just stabilized themselves, a voice resonated not far away. It was a voice that was filled with an inexplicable sense of excitement. Junior Uncle. At once, among the trio, the 2 ultimately beautiful women turned around to stare at the handsome young man standing in the middle with a confused look on their faces. Zhou Di, the handsome young man who was dressed in purple, looked at the person who was walking towards them. Chapter 1286. That purple-clad young man was none other than Duan Ling Tian. Because of the way Zhou Di called him, he took a long time before returning to his senses. Is Brother Yang here? Haha, Brother Ling Tian, you're finally back. Before Zhou Di could respond, a hearty laughter resonated in time. In the next instance, a young man appeared from not far away and stood there. It was none other than Yang Wei, Martial Emperor Ling Zan. These 2 must be the sisters-in-law, aren't they? Brother Ling Tian, you really are lucky. Soon, Yang Wei gaped at the 2 girls beside Duan Ling Tian, and his eyes were filled with shock. Even though he had traveled the length and breadth of half his lifetime, he had rarely seen many women that were as beautiful as them. Following Duan Ling Tian's introduction, Yang Wei and the 2 girls beside him greeted one another. Since they both knew about each other's presence, they were not surprised at all. Brother Ling Tian, don't these 2 sisters-in-law need to go back to Martial Emperor Yuhan? After all, they're here to represent Yuhan Valley, Yang Wei asked. No, Duan Ling Tian shook his head. Since he had already suspected that Martial Emperor Yuhan was actually plotting a scheme, of course, he would not let the 2 girls walk right back into the tiger's mouth. Apart from that, after being separated from the 2 girls for so long, he was not willing to part with them again. Right then, how he itched to tie these 2 girls to his side. HMPH. Just as Duan Ling Tian shook his head, a cold snort resonated from all everywhere. One could roughly tell that it was a woman's voice, and it was filled with fury. Just as Duan Ling Tian frowned, horror dawned on Yang Wei, Li Fei, and Ka instantly. Apparently, they could tell who the owner of this voice was. Not long after that, Duan Ling Tian saw a person materialize out of nowhere nearby. A woman stood right there and gave him a sense of inexplicable pressure that rose from the bottom of his heart. Right then, the woman was staring at him fixedly with a gaze that was as sharp as a knife. Was it you who kidnapped my 2 direct disciples? Without warning, the woman asked nonchalantly, and at the same time, she took a stride forward. The moment she advanced, the air in front of the woman instantly was sucked into a vacuum. An invisible energy gathered together and swept out directly towards Duan Ling Tian. Boom! Without any hesitation, the origin energy skyrocketed from Duan Ling Tian's body at the same time before transforming to become a 5-colored flame that finally solidified to become the shape of a sword. At that instance, as his gaze turned cold, the 5-colored flame in the shape of a sword gushed out of his body and seemed to transform into a gigantic sword before charging towards the invisible energy. That invisible energy came from the woman. It was not really invisible, but instead, this woman could control this energy completely and even concealed it. From this display, one could also see that the woman had not unleashed her full energy. If she did, she would not have the time to conceal the energy that she cast. Watch out! Horror dawned on Yang Wei right away. When he realized what was going on, it was already too late for him to act a savior. At the same time, when the energy on his body soared as he flew swiftly towards Duan Ling Tian, he yelled out loudly in warning. Bang! Before Yang Wei arrived, Duan Ling Tian's almost fully exerted strength, without the use of any spirit weapon, had already clashed with the woman's invisible energy and produced a loud bang. Master, please have mercy. It was this loud crash that snapped Li Fei and Ka into reality. As horror dawned on their delicate faces, they hastily pleaded that woman for mercy. That woman was Martial Emperor Yuhan, who had come from Yuhan Valley of the Cloud Continent. She was also Li Fei and Ka's master by name. However, when Li Fei and Ka shouted out before they could wait for Martial Emperor Yuhan's response, a vast, enormous force had already swept out to every direction, and at the same time, it also impacted them. At once, they were sent flying, and it was only after several dozen meters away that they finally came to a halt. This enormous energy came from the impact wave which was produced from the clash of Duan Lingtian's energy with Martial Emperor Yuhan's. It continued to sweep out in all directions in an impetuous manner. In the end, there was finally a result after the two jets of energy clashed with each other. Just as Duan Lingtian could feel that his energy was being crushed by Martial Emperor Yuhan's energy, her voice resonated in his ear via voice transmission, as expected from the third reincarnation of the rebirth Martial Emperor. Unfortunately, you're still no match for me now. Before Duan Lingtian could give it much thought, his energy had already been completely crushed by Martial Emperor Yuhan's energy. In the next instance, her energy burst out toward him as though she was crushing dried leaves. Boom! As expected, Duan Lingtian was sent flying with a blast. While he flew through the air, all he could feel was as though his entire body had gone limp. Even his consciousness was in a blur now. He felt like he was unable to snap awake for a long time. It was only when his body slammed on the ground viciously with a bang that he finally snapped back to reality and returned to his senses completely. It was so painful that he had to grit his teeth. His organs were almost shattered entirely then. He knew that Martial Emperor Yuhan had already shown some mercy. Otherwise, he would have already been dead. This Martial Emperor Yuhan must be at least at the 5th level Martial Emperor stage. With a jolt of his heart, Duan Lingtian speculated to himself. Boom, 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 comma. Just as Duan Lingtian was gripped by shock over Martial Emperor Yuhan's strength, a series of loud booms reverberated by his ears. When he lifted his head up with great difficulty, he realized that Yang Wei had appeared in between him and Martial Emperor Yuhan to protect him and was locked in a battle with her now. In just the blink of an eye, Duan Lingtian had just taken out a royal-grade resurrection pill and swallowed it. Then, he noticed that Yang Wei was already in a disadvantageous position and he had no choice but to take out his spirit sword that he always kept by his side. Yet, even with his spirit sword, Yang Wei could only come to a draw with Martial Emperor Yuhan. Scoundrel, young master. Right at that moment, Li Fei and Ka had already come to Duan Lingtian's side and were looking at him with a worried expression, particularly Ka, whose tears were threatening to fall now. In the distance, Zhou Di and the group of Ling Zan Peak's disciples, who heard the commotion, were all dumbfounded with their mouths agape. Many people were muttering in a stunned daze. Who was that woman? Without using any spirit weapon, she actually came to a draw with Lord Martial Emperor who's using a spirit weapon. Is she a powerhouse from the Hidden Fog Island? She's Martial Emperor Yuhan, Zhou Di answered with a wan face. Martial Emperor Yuhan. Upon hearing Zhou Di's words, horror dawned on the crowd right away. Of course, they knew who Martial Emperor Yuhan was. She could be said to be the top 3 among the group of well-known martial emperors in the Cloud Continent. Although she was a woman, she was a superwoman who was even greater than any male. Just as many people thought that Martial Emperor Yuhan would take her spirit weapon out and defeat Yang Wei in a blow, she suddenly yelled coldly with a voice that was so cold that it was bone-piercing, "Heaven and earth wipe out." When she opened her mouth, the 100-meter radius around him instantly seemed to have transformed into a world of ice and snow. Many people whose cultivation base were low felt so chilly they kept shuddering. This included Li Fei and Ka as well. However, as their origin energy proceeded to cover their bodies, they were no longer affected by it. She has actually cultivated her Hanbing's divine sword technique to the highest level. Upon hearing Martial Emperor Yuhan's voice and witnessing her actions, horror dawned on Duan Lingtian right away. Instantly, he stood up without any hesitation. Seeing him stand up suddenly like an uninjured person, even Li Fei and Ka, whose attention were on him, were taken aback right away. They had seen his injuries clearly. Even if he consumed the Grade 1 life recovery pill, he would need a few days of rest before he could recover. However, now, only a span of a few breaths had gone by and he had already recovered. Of course, the reason the two girls were taken by shock was that Duan Lingtian did not have time to tell them about the royal grade resurrection pill yet. Whoosh! After he stood up, Duan Lingtian immediately took out his royal grade spirit archery set without any hesitation. One hand held onto the bow while the other gripped onto the arrow. 5 colored flames continued to spurt out like sharp swords that were gushing out as they gathered in his hand. Creak! At that instant, the bowstring on the bow in Duan Ling Tian's hand was pulled into a full crescent shape before gushes of 5-colored energy merged into the bowstring. At once, a series of colorful lightning bolts appeared around the bowstring. Every time these lightning bolts moved around, they were like sharp swords that charged out as they radiated brilliant lights. Whoosh, 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 right at that moment, a whistle reverberated across the entire sky. It was the sword rays which was filled with a boundless chilling energy transformed from martial Emperor Yuan that was sweeping out towards Yongwei. In this process, the boundless sword rays gathered together midway and transformed to become a gigantic sword that gave off a series of chilling energy. There was a peculiar gap at the tip of this gigantic sword. Soon, with a flick of the gigantic sword, the gap at the tip of the sword pointed towards Yongwei as though it was taking aim. Shit, Yang Hui's eyes narrowed right away as horror dawned on him. Right then, other than sensing that he was being targeted, he felt that even the space by his side seemed to be locked on by a destructive energy. This feeling almost gave him despair. He could smell the scent of death now. Without any hesitation, Yang Hui's energy fully exploded from his body. Relying on the energy boost of his spirit sword, he tried to escape from the energy that was locked onto him. However, soon, he realized that no matter how he dodged, that energy that targeted him was still stuck to him. There was nowhere he could turn to at all. This crazy woman actually has such a technique. Looks like I, Martial Emperor Ling Zan, will perish by her hand today. Right at this moment, Yang Wei also realized that he could no longer escape. With a heavy sigh in his heart, all his hopes were dashed to pieces. Perish. As Martial Emperor Yuan opened her mouth and said nonchalantly, a small dot of light suddenly appeared on the gap of the gigantic sword's sword tip that was aiming towards Yang Wei. The moment the dot of light appeared, it was like a scorching sun that was extremely dazzling. However, unlike the heat from the scorching sun, the little dot emitted gushes of terrifying chilly aura instead, causing the people present at the scene who had a cultivation base below the Martial Emperor stage to feel like as though they were now naked in a world of ice and snow. At this moment, in their minds, terror rose from their souls. Chapter 1287, Heaven and Earth Wipeout. The little dot of light was the result of the Heaven and Earth Wipeout, the most powerful sword skill on the Cloud Continent, the Han Bing's divine sword technique. As soon as the skill was performed, the small light would explode into a cloud of light dust in the sky and bluster all over the place. Any living thing that came in contact with the light dust would have its existence wiped out from the world. The little spotlight contained an extreme chill. As soon as it exploded, anything that it grazed would turn into an ice sculpture immediately. Almost at the same time, the power of the explosion that came from the light would crush the ice sculptures completely. Clang! As the spotlight was getting brighter and about to explode, a heavy clang reverberated. The loud echo hurt most of the spectators' ears. That's impossible. Before most of them could respond, they heard Martial Emperor Yuan scream. It drew their attention while making them snap back to their senses. Where did the light go? At that moment, many of them noticed that the little spotlight that formed at the tip of Martial Emperor Yuan's giant sword had vanished. It had disappeared without any trace. Nobody knew where it went. Bang! Although the dot of light had disappeared, the energy charge from the giant sword that aimed at Yang Wei landed on him eventually and shot him out forcefully. He braced the attack because he was unprepared following the impression that he was going to be killed. Otherwise, he could have easily blocked that attack. FWAH. Yang Wei spat a big mouthful of blood out as expected after the attack. His face turned pale and his body was unstable. It was clear that the injury he had suffered was significant. He regained some color in his pale face after consuming a healing medicinal pill. Bang! A deafening explosion came from far away at that moment. It was the little spotlight that had detonated far away. As the epicenter, everything within the range of a 100-meter radius turned into a white ocean. However, the white ocean faded with the wind as if it had never appeared. The Heaven and Earth Wipeout ended just like that, destroying no one. At that moment, Duan Ling Tian activated his interlinking formation and recalled the arrow that deviated from the little spotlight. Martial Emperor Yuan finally trained her eyes on where Duan Ling Tian was located at the same time. The black lightning bolt that even she could not capture earlier had originated from the same direction. As Martial Emperor Yuan was taking a careful look at the surroundings and nearly laid her eyes on Duan Ling Tian, her pupils shrunk all of a sudden as if she had just noticed something. She looked up high above the sky in the next second. Martial Emperor Yuan seemed to have detected something at that very second. She asked loudly while staring solemnly, "Who's that?" Duan Lingtian, who thought that Martial Emperor Yuhan had found out about what he had done earlier, was shocked to find out that she was craning above his head instead of noticing the royal grade spirit archery set in his hand. From what Martial Emperor Yuhan said, there seemed to be someone over there. At that moment, Duan Lingtian put the royal grade spirit archery set in his hand away and looked above his head where everyone was focusing. Someone was standing there. It was an old man in a fiery red robe. He stood there as if he blended with heaven and earth, so it was difficult even to notice him. Nobody knew when he had appeared. Everyone experienced goosebumps as nobody, including Duan Lingtian, had noticed that he was there earlier. If the old man was to kill them, there might not be any survivors, so they felt fortunate that they were still alive. "Who exactly are you? Why are you interrupting us?" Martial Emperor Yuhan glared fiercely at the old man and asked in her deep voice. Duan Lingtian was shocked to hear what Martial Emperor Yuhan said. Even Li Fei and Ka were stunned. Did Martial Emperor Yuhan think that it was the old man who had blocked the heaven and earth wipeout sword skill that she had performed earlier? In reality, it was Duan Lingtian who had done so. He knew that for a fact very well as he was the one who had done it. Meanwhile, Li Fei and Ka had been by his side all this time. They witnessed everything from the beginning until the end, starting from Duan Lingtian retrieving the royal grade spirit archery set to him pulling the bow and shooting the arrow at lightning speed. Martial Emperor Yuhan did not manage to see the royal grade spirit archery set in Duan Lingtian's hand. Otherwise, she might not have misunderstood the situation. Naturally, she would never believe it unless she witnessed it with her own eyes. She had tested Duan Lingtian's ability earlier and knew that it was impossible for his insignificant ability to stop the heaven and earth wipeout sword skill that she had aimed at Yang Wei. However, what she was unaware of was that apart from the royal grade spirit weapon, Duan Lingtian had cultivated a saint-grade martial tactic. When he attacked earlier, he had performed the saint-grade martial tactic Colossal Arrow Light Arrow. Although he had just begun cultivating and was considered to only be at the preliminary stage, the power that he displayed was already beyond comparison to a heaven-rank advanced martial skill at peak level. Facing the ferocious Martial Emperor Yuhan who commanded in her deep voice, the old man in the red robes merely glanced at her and responded, "You, leave." He did not seem to care about her in the very least. "Sir, it seems that you're sticking your nose in our business." Martial Emperor Yuhan glared at the red-robed old man while a cold gleam flashed in her eyes. The old man ignored her this time. "All right, okay, since I'm nothing to you, I'd love to see if you have the ability to interrupt my business." Martial Emperor Yuhan smiled despite her rage and dashed toward him at the same time. She was so fast that she seemed to vanish in thin air before everyone. As things were moving fast, most of them thought that they were being treated to an intense fight, so they were excited. However, nobody expected what happened next. Bang! A loud thud echoed and a majestic shockwave swept towards all directions. It was overwhelming, causing many of them who had a low cultivation base to stagger a few steps back. Not only that, many trees nearby were uprooted one after another too. However, nobody had the time to care about all that. What? They stared blankly at Martial Emperor Yuhan who was shot out like an arrow leaving its bow, disbelief written all over their faces. In just one blow, Martial Emperor Yuhan was shot out. Indeed, it was a messy defeat. At that second, everyone shifted their attention to the old man. He stood there with fiery red flames crackling on his body. Energy of various colors billowed around the fiery red flame but they were insignificant. "Who exactly are you?" Martial Emperor Yuhan spat a couple of mouthfuls of blood out. She looked at the old man again after consuming a healing medicinal pill and regained color on her pale face, but there was evident fear in her eyes now. The old man had attacked her before she could even react earlier. During the attack, all she could feel was a gush of unstoppable energy coming at her. She flew out when the energy landed on her. "I don't want to repeat what I said," spoke the old man again, his tone colder this time. All of a sudden, Martial Emperor Yuhan had a drastic change of expression and dared not stay any longer. Soon, she turned to Duan Lingtian with reluctance in her eyes. She was so close to taking the rebirth Martial Emperor's third reincarnation with her. It seemed like she had to look for another opportunity to do so some other time. Before leaving, Martial Emperor Yuhan glanced at Li Fei and Ka casually. From the hostility in their eyes, she realized it was impossible for both of them to leave with her. She did not mind that as the two ladies were just tools to her. To be accurate, they were tools to lead her to the rebirth Martial Emperor's third reincarnation. Now that she had found the rebirth Martial Emperor's third reincarnation, they were worthless to her. Whoosh! Quickly, Martial Emperor Yuhan disappeared in front of Duan Lingtian and the rest. Everyone was relieved. At that moment, they looked at the old man in unison. Thank you, Senior, Yang Wei thanked the old man immediately. Just like Martial Emperor Yuhan who had just left, he did not realize that it was Duan Lingtian who had engaged at the critical moment. The other 9 people from Lingtian Peak including Zhou Di thought the same too. The old man in the red robes responded to Yang Hui's gratitude with a slight nod. Subsequently, he left after taking a glance at Duan Lingtian and the 2 ladies beside him, disappearing without a trace. He appeared like a gust of wind and left the same. Many of the Lingzan Peak disciples exclaimed, Supreme. That's right, only such a powerhouse deserves to be called a Supreme. They were still a little shaken by what happened earlier. He performed a saint-grade martial tactic earlier. Just when Duan Lingtian was trying to figure the identity of the old man, Wang Ba's voice came to his ears. His voice was filled with affirmation. Saint-grade martial tactic? Do you mean the senior earlier? Duan Lingtian was stunned. That's right, Wang Ba confirmed, although the saint-grade martial tactic that he performed just now wasn't as good as the one you're cultivating, it has a significant impact too. His ability isn't that much more powerful than Martial Emperor Yuhan's. However, since he cultivated the saint-grade martial tactic, he could have annihilated her in one blow. Wang Ba proceeded to promote the saint-grade martial tactic. If Duan Lingtian had been skeptical of the saint-grade martial tactic in the past, his doubts were lifted now. The saint-grade martial tactic colossal arrowlight arrow that he cultivated had just revealed its power on a level that went beyond his imagination. Young master, is it still painful? Ka carefully looked at Duan Lingtian with concern written all over her face. Li Fei was even more straightforward and began to touch Duan Lingtian's body all over checking for injuries. Behind the clouds high above the sky, the old man in the red robes was there. He did not leave, standing there while watching everything that was happening beneath. We're leaving now, are you really not going to see him? The old man turned around and looked at a breathtaking lady who was also dressed in red. Her looks were on par with Li Fei and Ka's. Chapter 1288, I'm afraid, I might not want to leave if I meet him, sighed the lady in red softly, her eyes as gentle as flowing water. She had her eyes on Duan Lingtian who was beneath the clouds. He might not want me to leave. HMPH, that brat has ladies on both of his sides now. I'm afraid he's forgotten all about you, scoffed the old man. The lady smiled faintly. I've finally seen his 2 fiancés, they're as outstanding as he said. No, they're more outstanding than what he told me. The old man suddenly said, you can stay if you regret your decision. I'll inform them for you. If I regret my decision, they might think you're fooling them and even kill you. If you're dead, they'll take me away eventually. By then, I might drag him into this. The lady shook her head. If the ending's the same, I don't see the point of creating unnecessary drama. She was eager to see Duan Lingtian. However, she knew that now was not the best time. Big brother Duan, do you know, I, Tian Wu, have restored my memory. The lady thought to herself. She was Feng Tian Wu who had been taken away back at the Lost Stone Forest of the Cloud Continent. The person who had taken her away was the old man in the red robes next to her, Kai Huo. Lady, the difference between the Saint Land and here, or even the Cloud Continent, is like heaven and earth. If you leave now, who knows when you'll see him again? Kai Huo sighed. We'll meet one day, Feng Tianwu said, feeling a strong affirmative instinct. Even if she left this time, she knew she would meet this man of her dreams again. Let's go, Feng Tianwu said, and subsequently, she seemed to have transformed herself into a ball of flames. She flew away and vanished in the sky. Then, Kai Huo followed her closely. Before Feng Tianwu left, a tablet fell from where she had been earlier. She had intentionally left it behind. Ancient words that were difficult to decipher filled the tablet. Most importantly, the edge of the tablet was chipped. Whoosh! The tablet fell at an accelerating speed which alerted Duan Lingtian and the rest. Everyone looked at the sky one after another. A glance was enough for them to notice the falling tablet and their jaws dropped. What's happening? I've seen rain, snow, and even hail, but it's a tablet this time. A Lingzan Peak disciple gulped hard with disbelief in his eyes. It was the first time in his life witnessing a tablet falling from the sky. A Deville Seal tablet, as everyone was stunned by what was happening including Martial Emperor Ling Zan Yongwei. Recognizing the tablet, Duan Ling Tian's eyes lit up. It was the Deville Seal tablet. HMPH. Kid, the Deville Seal tablet's fake. In his excited stupor, before Duan Ling Tian could figure the reason the Deville Seal tablet was falling from the sky, Wang Ba's voice was heard. It was like a cold, wet blanket being thrown at him and jolting him. It's fake. Filled with suspicion, he leapt into the sky and caught the Deville Seal tablet. It really is fake. He recognized that the Deville Seal tablet was fake the second he caught it. After all, the Deville Seal tablet was no foreign item to him. He even remembered the Deville Seal tablet's components clearly. This fake Deville Seal tablet had a significant difference from the real Deville Seal tablet's component. However, he had no idea that the fake Deville Seal tablet that he was holding in his hands had been forged by Lost Stone Forest Martial Emperor's direct disciple, Zhou Yi. Zhou Yi had forged the fake tablet before getting his hands on the real item. It was only natural that the component bore a major difference compared to the real one. However, the fake Deville Seal tablet that Zhou Yi had forged by copying the real one, which was the one that Martial Emperor Shiqi had taken away, shared a similar component with the real tablet. Feng Tianwu had come in contact with the Deville Seal tablet a long time ago, so she did not realize that it was forged when Martial Emperor Shiqi gave her the fake Deville Seal tablet that Zhou Yi had copied earlier. Pa! The fake Deville Seal tablet broke into pieces when Duan Ling Tian inserted his energy into it. It turned into countless bits of gravel and fell onto the ground. Whoosh! Almost as soon as the fake Deville Seal tablet was crushed, Duan Ling Tian leapt into the sky and passed through the clouds, appearing above them. He had many unanswered questions. Although the Deville Seal tablet was fake, where did it come from? He did not believe that it had just fallen from the sky. There must have been someone here just now. He left the fake Deville Seal tablet behind and left. What's his intention? He simply could not figure what had happened despite cracking his head. Brother Ling Tian, what happened just now? At that second, Yang Wei, who leapt into the air after him, arrived next to him and asked with doubt written all over his face. Li Fei and Ka followed and looked at Duan Ling Tian with misgivings too. I initially had the exact tablet. The boost it provides is comparable with a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon. But I lost this tablet a year ago before I suffered my memory loss, Duan Ling Tian said. The tablet just now was fake. It isn't the tablet I had. Is that so? Yang Wei was stunned and became a little speechless, unable to figure how that had happened. Soon, he seemed to recall something which caused him to turn solemn. That crazy Martial Emperor Yuhan. How dare she attack you just because you spent a little more time with her disciples? She even tried to kill me. She's a lunatic, Yang Wei exclaimed, recalling what had happened earlier. He recalled the scene when Martial Emperor Yuhan had appeared and attacked Duan Ling Tian, then attempted to kill him after, injuring Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian's expression became a little unnatural after hearing Yang Wei. He was the only one who knew the reason why Martial Emperor Yuhan had behaved like that. As opposed to what she said, she had not come for her two direct disciples that Duan Ling Tian had taken away from her. Martial Emperor Yuhan's ultimate goal was Duan Ling Tian. To Martial Emperor Yuhan, he was the rebirth Martial Emperor's third reincarnation and a priceless treasure. Fortunately, the senior lent a helping hand. Otherwise, Yang Wei would have been dead, Yang Wei sighed. Yang Hui's words made Li Fei and Ka gaze into each other's eyes. They saw their own surprise reflected as they were clear about what had happened earlier. It was their man Duan Ling Tian who had saved Yang Wei from Martial Emperor Yuhan's hand with his bow and arrow. He was the one who had pulled Yang Wei out of the gates of hell. However, they did not take the initiative to tell Yang Wei about it. They knew that their man would tell Yang Wei himself if he wanted him to know. I wonder who that senior was. Could he be one of the 3 hidden Fog Island masters? Duan Ling Tian speculated. No, Yang Wei shook his head. I've seen the 3 hidden Fog Island masters once in the past. Although the senior had a powerful ability, I don't think he's on the same level as the 3 island masters. Moreover, if I'm not mistaken, the technique that he performed to attack Martial Emperor Yuhan is a martial skill that's higher than heaven rank advanced level. Yang Wei became serious as he spoke. A martial skill that's higher than heaven rank advanced level. Li Fei and Ka were shocked. They looked lost as it was their first time hearing such a martial skill. That's right, Yang Wei nodded with desire burning in his eyes. Martial skills that are higher than heaven rank advanced level are called the Saint grade martial tactic. No matter the overseas Saint Islands or the Cloud Continent, there are only two ancient clans that mastered the Saint grade martial tactic. Saint grade martial tactic. Li Fei and Ka had learned about how terrifying the Saint grade martial tactic from Yang Hui's explanation and were shocked. Soon, they looked into each other's eyes and recalled something. They then looked at Duan Lingtian at the same time. They had witnessed Duan Lingtian saving Yang Wei earlier. Rascal, did you perform the Saint grade martial tactic just now? Li Fei asked through voice transmission. Ka's voice came through voice transmission after Li Fei to ask the same question. That's right, Duan Lingtian answered honestly, not hiding from the two ladies. Rascal, can I learn that? Li Fei spoke again through voice transmission, appearing a little excited. Although Ka did not say anything, one could tell from her hopeful eyes that she was very interested in learning the Saint grade martial tactic too. Of course, you can. Duan Lingtian looked at Ka at the same time as he responded to Li Fei. He said through voice transmission, Ka, I'll hand you the Saint grade martial tactic to you when we return. Thank you, young master. Ka's cheeks were flushing slightly when she heard that. Silly girl, you don't have to thank me. Duan Lingtian smiled while shaking his head. Seeing the three of them flirting with their eyes, Yang Wei felt a little awkward and left knowing that it was only appropriate for him to do so. He left to comfort the Lingzhan Peak disciples. Whatever that had happened earlier had left a haunting scar on the Lingzhan Peak disciples' hearts. However, the incident the Lingzhan Peak people experienced did not alert the people on the southern island, including the martial emperors and demon emperor powerhouses from the Cloud Continent as well as their people. The reason why they were not alerted was the soundproofing inscription formations set up around their accommodation on the Hidden Fog Island. The Hidden Fog martial competition's happening tomorrow. Duan Lingtian brought the two ladies back and his eyes gleamed in excitement. After handing the Saint token with the Saint grade martial tactic Colossal Aerolite Arrow to the two ladies, Duan Lingtian sat with his legs crossed in the compound while visualizing the Colossal Aerolite Arrow in his head. From what Wang Ba said, my Colossal Aerolite Arrow's only considered to be on the preliminary stage. But the preliminary Colossal Aerolite Arrow managed to break Martial Emperor Yuhan's Heaven and Earth wipeout. At the same time, Duan Lingtian recalled what had happened earlier. Although Martial Emperor Yuhan cultivated Han Bing's divine sword technique to its peak and managed to perform the Heaven and Earth wipeout, she doesn't seem to be familiar with the latter, so she's mostly just at the initial stage, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Chapter 1289. Because Duan Lingtian had inherited the memory of the rebirth Martial Emperor who was familiar with the Han Bing's divine sword technique, the technique was not alien to him. It only took one glance for him to grasp Martial Emperor Yuhan's comprehension on the Han Bing's divine sword technique and the Heaven and Earth wipeout when she had performed them earlier. When he had passed the Han Bing's divine sword technique to Ka back then, he did not think there would be anyone else in the world who would know the technique. However, never had he thought that a person who cultivated the Han Bing's divine sword technique just like Ka did would appear on the Cloud Continent 20,000 years later. Not only that, he never expected the person to cultivate Han Bing's divine sword technique to its peak. When one cultivates the Han Bing's divine sword technique to its limit and even the Heaven and Earth wipeout to perfection, the person will be able to fight Martial Emperor Han Bing back in time. Such a person would be undefeatable if she were to fight someone who has the same cultivation base and profundities as hers, unless she encountered someone who cultivated methods belonging to the Tao Martial Saint Land, some martial tactics, or someone who cultivates the 3 Lives Rebirth technique or the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique. Duan Lingtian knew that very well himself. If Martial Emperor Yuhan had cultivated the Heaven and Earth wipeout to perfection today, the Colossal Aerolite Arrow that I've mastered now might not be able to block her attack. Although the Colossal Aerolite Arrow's a Saint-grade martial tactic, I've only mastered a small part of it, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. He was motivated as he recalled the terrifying impact of the Colossal Aerolite Arrow. Driven to cultivate the Colossal Aerolite Arrow further now, he was determined as ever. He had a strong instinct that if he managed to cultivate the Colossal Aerolite Arrow to its peak, it would be a piece of cake for him to kill Martial Emperor Yuhan despite his current cultivation base and profundities. Wang Ba, to verify his hunch, Duan Lingtian asked Wang Ba for his opinion. Soon, he got the answer. HMPH. Stop dreaming, brat, let's not talk about cultivating the primitive human rank saint-grade martial tactic just yet. Even if you're cultivating a prominent human rank saint-grade martial tactic, even with top-notch comprehension, it's impossible for you to cultivate it to its peak without years of hard work, Wang Ba scoffed. But, of course, if you really manage to cultivate it to its peak, it'll be a piece of cake for you to kill that woman today, to the extent that a single arrow alone could kill her in one blow. A primitive human-ranked saint-grade martial tactic isn't comparable with a prominent human-ranked saint-grade martial tactic, Wang Ba proceeded. With a first-level martial emperor stage cultivation base, an arrow alone would be enough to kill a powerhouse above the 5th-level martial emperor stage in one blow. Following the iron law of the Cloud Continent, his full-strength attack and the boost from a royal-grade spirit weapon were not comparable to Martial Emperor Yuan, who possessed a cultivation base above the 5th-level Martial Emperor stage. Even without any spirit weapons and martial skills, Martial Emperor Yuan's strength alone was enough to kill him despite having cultivated a variety of heaven-rank advanced martial skills to perfection. Naturally, it was the iron rule of the Cloud Continent. The Saint-grade martial tactic was not from the Cloud Continent, which was why it could go against the iron rule of the Cloud Continent. My current ability is on the 1st-level Martial Emperor stage with the comprehension of the 5th-level Fused Profundity and the 5th-level Emperor stage Sword Profundity. My 1st-level Martial Emperor stage cultivation base with full-blown origin energy is similar to the strength of 2 ancient black dragons. No matter my 5th-level Fused Profundity or my 5th-level Emperor stage Sword Profundity, each of them is similar to the strength of 6 ancient black dragons. To put them together, that would be a total of the power of 17 ancient black dragons. The Royal Grade Spirit Weapon gives a 120% boost to my origin energy. The explosion of my origin energy is similar to the strength of 2 ancient black dragons. That means that the boost of my origin energy would be similar to the force of 2 ancient black dragons and 4,000 ancient horned dragons. Thus, the most powerful strength that I can exert now would be the equivalent to 19 ancient black dragons and 4,000 ancient horned dragons. That's less than 20 ancient black dragons. Duan Lingtian understood the strength that he could use at that moment. Martial Emperor Yuan's current cultivation bases at least on the 5th-level Martial Emperor stage. Together with the profundities that she's comprehended, an ordinary 5th-level Martial Emperor powerhouse would be able to display the strength of at least 15 ancient black dragons, with an origin energy that's as strong as 6 ancient black dragons. A 5th-level Martial Emperor powerhouse's strength is at least above that of 21 ancient black dragons. That's without using any spirit weapons. Her strength surpasses mine without using any spirit weapons. I'd be completely crushed as soon as she uses a spirit weapon. Of course, the Martial Emperor's ability isn't comparable to an ordinary 5th-level Martial Emperor powerhouses. All else aside, my speculation from the rebirth Martial Emperor's life memories and experience says that her ability without any spirit weapons would at least be above the strength of 25 ancient black dragons. However, despite such a powerful person, her heaven and earth wipeout was crushed by my colossal aerolite arrow. I have a feeling that the colossal aerolite arrow I've mastered is powerful enough to get a strength boost of more than 4 to 5 ancient black dragons. Duan Lingtian's emotions stirred as he thought about this. A boost of 4 to 5 ancient black dragons' strength. How mind-blowing was that? This is just the power of the colossal aerolite arrow that I've cultivated at the preliminary stage. The Saint-grade martial tactics definitely astounding and full of surprises, Duan Lingtian mumbled softly. My cheapskate father's finally doing it right this time. I can't believe he left behind such a powerful Saint-grade martial tactic for me. With this Saint-grade martial tactic, I'm afraid I'll be powerful enough to rule the Cloud Continent and even this overseas Saint Island soon. He was absolutely confident about it. The more he thought about it, the more he was amazed by the colossal aerolite arrow's power. At the same time, he worked even harder on his cultivation. He did not plan to rest and conserve his energy for the Hidden Fog martial competition on the Hidden Fog Island that was happening the next day. All that remained in his world at that moment was the colossal aerolite arrow. Meanwhile, Ka and Li Fei realized that they were not qualified to cultivate the colossal aerolite arrow just yet, so they proceeded to work on their own cultivation. The peace was broken as the morning light illuminated the Hidden Fog Island. The island became crowded as it was the day of the Hidden Fog martial competition. It was the day that everyone had been waiting for. Considering the destruction that would be the result of the powerhouses who participated in the Hidden Fog martial competition, the battle did not take place on the island itself. Instead, it was held on the ocean far away in the north of Hidden Fog Island. The 3 Hidden Fog Island masters hosted the competition themselves. As the managers of the entire island, rumor had it that they were the 3 most powerful individuals on the Hidden Fog Island. Not many people knew if they were really mighty, as not many people had actually seen them fight. However, just like the saying, there are no waves without wind, whether it was the residents of the Hidden Fog Island or outsiders, not many people doubted the 3 Hidden Fog Island masters' abilities. However, there was still the minority who did not believe how strong they were. Some of the skeptics went to the eastern island of the Hidden Fog Island in confidence in an attempt to challenge the 3 island masters. They wanted to uncover the 3 island masters disguised to show to the world that they were frauds. They were like carp swimming across the river as they headed towards the eastern island of the Hidden Fog Island to challenge the 3 island masters. Nobody knew what the outcome would be. However, the one thing that everyone was sure of was that they had never seen those who left for the east of the Hidden Fog Island ever since. It was like they had vanished from the world completely. As more and more people disappeared, fewer people dared to challenge the Hidden Fog Island masters. Eventually, not many people doubted their abilities again. The reason most of them speculated about the disappearance of the people who left to the eastern island was related to the 3 Hidden Fog Island masters. Most of them even speculated that the 3 island masters might kill them if they fought. Everything made sense if that were the case. As the Hidden Fog martial competition took place on the ocean, there was no restriction on who could attend it. Therefore, almost everyone from the Hidden Fog Island made it. No matter men or women, young or old, everyone was there. The young ones who could not fly came with the adults while those who were old and too weak to fly came with the young and strong. In a nutshell, the Hidden Fog martial competition was a sensation on the entire Hidden Fog Island. It was so significant that every store in the Hidden Fog City was closed. The sea of people that usually crowded the Hidden Fog City were nowhere to be seen. The city became dead overnight. The ocean where the Hidden Fog martial competition was held was filled with people early in the morning. All of them were anticipating the commencement of the competition. They're here, they're here. As a martial emperor powerhouse appeared with his 10 disciples behind him, an uproar broke among the bevy of people above the ocean. Their emotions stirred as if they were the ones participating in the Hidden Fog martial competition. More and more martial emperor and demon emperor powerhouses from the Cloud Continent showed up one after another. A party of 10 followed behind each of them. Yuhan, you're early. A martial emperor powerhouse greeted martial emperor Yuhan who had just arrived. Lei Ming, it's been a while, martial emperor Yuhan responded calmly like she was not interested. The martial emperor who had greeted martial emperor Yuhan was the martial emperor powerhouse from the Thundercloud Peak from the Cloud Continent. He was the owner of the Thundercloud Peak, martial emperor Lei Ming. Chapter 1290. Among the martial emperor powerhouses from the Cloud Continent, both martial emperor Lei Ming or martial emperor Yuhan ranked in the top 3. They had similar abilities which earned them the second and third place at a tie. Even they could not tell who was second as none of them had the confidence to defeat each other even if they were to fight. There was only one martial emperor powerhouse who ranked above them. Naturally, they were compared with martial emperor powerhouses on the Cloud Continent alone excluding the demon emperor powerhouses. Due to the ranking, martial emperor Yuhan and martial emperor Lei Ming despised each other from the beginning of time. They were not acquaintances, let alone friends. Typically, martial emperor Lei Ming's initiative to greet martial emperor Yuhan was not merely a simple greeting. Martial emperor Lei Ming glanced behind martial emperor Yuhan and pretended to be surprised and exclaimed, "Yuhan, did you only bring 8 Yuhan Valley disciples with you? It seems like there's really no one left in your Yuhan Valley, tisk tisk, that's so sad to hear. Is Yuhan Valley going downhill under your reign?" Martial Emperor Yuhan seemed to be mentally prepared for that retort, so she showed no distress about what he said. Meanwhile, her most powerful direct disciple, Shu Rong, who was leading the Yuhan Valley disciples behind her was glaring at martial Emperor Lei Ming in rage. "Yuhan, it seems like the rules at your Yuhan Valley's still loose. Look at your group of female disciples. It's alright if they didn't greet me as their senior but really, how dare they?" Tisk tisk. Martial Emperor Lei Ming snickered in mockery. "Our pleasure to meet you, Junior Uncle Yuhan." Just as soon as Martial Emperor Lei Ming was done speaking, the 10 Thundercloud Peak disciples behind Martial Emperor Lei Ming bowed to Martial Emperor Yuhan at the same time. They seemed very courteous, which caused the 8 Yuhan Valley disciples to look disgusted. The actions of the people from Thundercloud Peak was undoubtedly a slap to their faces and to Yuhan Valley too. HMPH. No matter how strong Martial Emperor Yuhan's willpower was, she could not help but scoff in anger after being mocked by Martial Emperor Lei Ming a few times and sensing the judging eyes around her. Naturally, she might be able to take it a little bit more if she was her usual self. The thing was that Martial Emperor Yuhan had just been defeated the day before. Her mood was ruined up till now, so it made sense for her to get mad easily. Watching Martial Emperor Yuhan leave with the 8 Yuhan Valley disciples in a fit, Martial Emperor Lei Ming finally had a smile across his face. It was the smile of victory. Their rivalry had been going on for over 10 years and it had yet to come to an end until now. To him, to be able to defeat Martial Emperor Yuhan verbally today at such an occasion was undoubtedly something to be pleased about. Let's go, Martial Emperor Lei Ming commanded the 10 Thundercloud Peak disciples behind him while everyone was watching. They proceeded to walk while looking for a suitable place to settle in. There were a young man and a young lady who followed closely behind him while the remaining 8 persons accompanied behind them. There was a mix of young, middle-aged, and old men among the 8 of them. So, he's Martial Emperor Lei Ming from the Cloud Continent. I've heard about him. He's the owner of the Cloud Continent's Thundercloud Peak. He's definitely in the top 3 among the Martial Emperor powerhouses on the Cloud Continent. Did you just find out about it now? It appears that you've no idea about the woman who argued with him earlier. She's the person who ranks the same as him. She's the owner of the Cloud Continent's Yuhan Valley, Martial Emperor Yuhan. That woman was Martial Emperor Yuhan, the astounding female peak-level powerhouse renowned on the Cloud Continent. As Martial Emperor Lei Ming and his people moved to look for a suitable place to settle in, many of the Hidden Fog Island people who were watching discussed among themselves with enthusiasm coloring their voices. Naturally, most of them were exclaiming how powerful Martial Emperor Yuhan was. No matter whether it was on the Hidden Fog Island or the Cloud Continent, females were innately much weaker than men in general. It was difficult for men to cultivate to the level Martial Emperor Yuhan was on, not to mention the fact that she was a woman. Therefore, compared to Martial Emperor Lei Ming, their admiration for the female Martial Emperor powerhouse was infinitely higher. A female whose ability was powerful enough to be ranked top 3 among other Martial Emperor powerhouses on the Cloud Continent was mind-blowing. As the people from the Hidden Fog Island were whispering and discussing among themselves, Martial Emperor Lei Ming heard every single word that they said. His face turned solemn. Now, some of them were even talking about how he lost to a woman and that he should be ashamed to be a man. Having gone through a lot throughout the years, he found this incredibly humiliating. However, he could not argue with them. Their gender difference aside, age-wise, he was a few years older than Martial Emperor Yuhan. The tall, young man who followed closely behind Martial Emperor Lei Ming was Zhou Yi. He said to the young lady next to him after hearing what the people around were whispering, "Senior Sister Bai, I think you're the only one who can win Master's dignity back from such embarrassment." The young lady was Martial Emperor Lei Ming's first direct disciple, Lan Bai. She was a female Martial Emperor powerhouse just like Martial Emperor Yuhan. Naturally, it was impossible for her current ability to be on par with Martial Emperor Yuhan's. However, she had the advantage of youth and still had a shot to surpass Martial Emperor Yuhan in the future. Martial Emperor Yuhan. Hearing what Zhou Yi said, Lan Bai looked at the back of the woman who had gone far away immediately while a gleam sparkled in her eyes. She had become Martial Emperor Lei Ming's disciple before Zhou Yi did, so she felt the pain from the whispers around. Just like what Zhou Yi said, she was the only one who could clear her master's name from such embarrassment. As soon as she defeated Martial Emperor Yuhan and became a notorious Martial Emperor powerhouse on the Cloud Continent or even the overseas Saint Islands, she would definitely win back her master's dignity that he had lost that day. By then, nobody would say that her master had lost to a woman. Instead, they would gush about how her master taught a female disciple who defeated Martial Emperor Yuhan. When the time came, it would be clear who emerged as the winner. Although Zhou Yi was speaking to Lan Bai softly, Martial Emperor Lei Ming had exceptional hearing, so he heard everything loud and clear. At that moment, the agitation in him was replaced with pleasure. This Zhou Yi isn't too shabby. Not only he's low-key and modest, but he's always considerate towards me. I've lived a decent life for having direct disciples like him and Bayer. The more Martial Emperor Lei Ming thought about it, the more pleased he was. Zhou Yi. Just when Martial Emperor Lei Zhong was indulging in his delight, an explosive, raging scream broke the air. While shock flitted over his face, Martial Emperor Lei Ming's face shifted to become solemn. He could tell that the person had ill intentions from just his voice before even seeing his face. It was aimed towards his direct disciple Zhou Yi. However, he saw a rather familiar silhouette when he turned around. The person approached with 10 people who were marching in majestically. It was the leader who had screamed earlier. Martial Emperor Shi Qi. Martial Emperor Lei Ming recognized the leader in just a glance. It was the owner of the Cloud Continent's Lost Stone Forest, Martial Emperor Shi Qi. As a martial emperor powerhouse from the Cloud Continent himself, he had seen martial emperor Shichi a couple of times before. Martial Emperor Shichi was humble when they had met earlier, but today he was fierce and ignored martial Emperor Lei Ming completely. At that time, all martial Emperor Lei Ming could feel was the raging fire rumbling in him that could explode anytime. Never did martial Emperor Shichi expect to see Zhou Yi the traitor at the Hidden Fog martial competition that he had brought his 10 disciples to. Although it was just the outline of his silhouette far away, he recognized that the figure belonged to Zhou Yi right away. Zhou Yi was his direct disciple who he once cherished the most, but turned his back on him. At that moment, rage filled martial Emperor Shichi's eyes as he glared deadly at Zhou Yi. At that very moment, Zhou Yi seemed to be the only thing in his world. He even ignored martial Emperor Lei Ming, who had turned around upon hearing his fierce scream and stood before Zhou Yi now. "Junior brother Zhou Yi, I think he's martial Emperor Shichi from the Lost Stone Forest, did you offend him?" Lan Bai, who was next to Zhou Yi, recognized martial Emperor Shichi as soon as she turned around. As martial Emperor Lei Ming's favorite direct disciple, she always followed him everywhere, and she had seen martial Emperor Shichi once, so she recognized him. There was a gleam of fear that flashed deep within Zhou Yi's eyes as he faced martial Emperor Shichi, who was glaring at him in wrath and might attack him anytime. However, the gleam of fear vanished immediately and was replaced with calmness. In the blink of an eye, Zhou Yi calmed down entirely as he looked into martial Emperor Shichi's eyes neutrally. "It's you, Senior Shichi." Zhou Yi nodded at martial Emperor Shichi and greeted him calmly. "Senior Shichi." Martial Emperor Shichi was stunned to hear how Zhou Yi addressed him. Even the couple of Lost Stone Forest disciples who knew Zhou Yi were stunned as they stood behind him. Soon, something dawned on martial Emperor Shichi. It was clear that Zhou Yi had someone backing him up. Otherwise, he would not be this calm facing him without an ounce of fear. At that moment, martial Emperor Shichi looked away from Zhou Yi and glanced around him. He seemed to be looking for the pillar of support that made Zhou Yi so bold. Martial Emperor Lei Ming. He saw martial Emperor Lei Ming, who was standing behind Zhou Yi, immediately. He realized that was how Zhou Yi managed to keep his composure. "Zhou Yi, you're pretty capable. It's only been a while since you betrayed my Lost Stone Forest and you've found yourself a pillar of support now." Martial Emperor Shichi mocked Zhou Yi again after taking a deep breath in. Betray the Lost Stone Forest? Martial Emperor Shichi's accusation made everyone gasp. The 9 Thundercloud Peak disciples, including Lan Bai, were staring at Zhou Yi with distrust at that moment. Was Zhou Yi a traitor to the Lost Stone Forest? Chapter 1291. Besides the Thundercloud Peak disciples, even the owner of Thundercloud Peak, Martial Emperor Lei Ming, was observing Zhou Yi at the moment. He seemed intent on verifying if what Martial Emperor Shichi said was the truth. His instinct told him that everything Martial Emperor Shichi uttered might be valid. "What? Daren't you admit the fact that you've betrayed my Lost Stone Forest?" Martial Emperor Shichi mocked as Zhou Yi appeared to be ignoring him. Then, he solemnly said, "Martial Emperor Lei Ming, I've no idea why would the traitor of the Lost Stone Forest come to Thundercloud Peak, but I must warn you about him. Zhou Yi's not worthy of your trust and protection. He betrayed my Lost Stone Forest and he'll betray your Thundercloud Peak too." Now, Martial Emperor Shichi was almost sure that Zhou Yi became a Thundercloud Peak disciple to seek the protection of Martial Emperor Lei Ming. He knew very well that he could not compare to Martial Emperor Lei Ming's powerful ability. He would have to play it smart instead of fighting if he wanted to punish the treacherous Zhou Yi under Martial Emperor Lei Ming's watch and even take back the mysterious tablet that Zhou Yi had swapped and stolen from him. "I betrayed the Lost Stone Forest." As soon as Martial Emperor Shichi was done speaking, Zhou Yi asked incredulously before Martial Emperor Lei Ming managed to respond. He lifted his head slowly and glanced at Martial Emperor Shichi calmly. "I admit I used to be your direct disciple, Martial Emperor Shichi. But are you sure that I left the Lost Stone Forest by betraying you, or was it because you didn't want me there?" "I didn't want you there." Martial Emperor Shichi, who was taken aback by Zhou Yi's intimidating comeback, reacted immediately and smirked. However, when he opened his mouth and was about to say something, he snapped it shut obediently in an odd way. At that moment, the smirk on his face was completely frozen now. Out of the blue, he had heard a voice in his ears that was spoken through voice transmission. "Shichi, if you dare to say I'm a traitor of the Lost Stone Forest's traitor again, I'll hand the tablet to Martial Emperor Lei Ming now. By then, it'll be impossible for you to take it back." The voice was Zhou Yi's. It was a threat, an obvious threat, Zhou Yi managed to get Martial Emperor Shiqi to shut his mouth easily with his words. He was hitting him below the belt. Naturally, the reason why Zhou Yi's threat was effective was that Martial Emperor Shiqi did not want to give up on the tablet that had been stolen. He knew that Martial Emperor Shiqi's biggest goal was not to punish him as a traitor but to get his hands on the tablet. Compared to the tablet, his betrayal was not worth mentioning. You bastard! Hearing Zhou Yi's threat, Martial Emperor Shiqi was enraged. However, there was nothing that he could do apart from cursing Zhou Yi via voice transmission. He was really worried that Zhou Yi would hand the tablet over to Martial Emperor Lei Ming. There was still hope if the tablet remained in Zhou Yi's hands. However, if it got to Martial Emperor Lei Ming, retrieving it was almost hopeless. Comparing both situations, it was only logical that he hoped to get the tablet from Zhou Yi rather than having it end up with Martial Emperor Lei Ming. He had no doubts if the tablet was still with Zhou Yi at all. Judging from Zhou Yi's greed, unless he was faced with a life or death situation, it was impossible that he would have handed the tablet to someone else. What, have you nothing to say now? Was whatever I said right? Zhou Yi taunted Martial Emperor Shiqi, who was furious but could not speak as everyone was staring at him. Zhou Yi, what exactly happened? At that moment, Martial Emperor Lei Ming finally spoke. His voice was intense and nobody could discern his emotion in his tone. Master, it's a fact that I used to be a Lost Stone Forest disciple and even Martial Emperor Shiqi's direct disciple, but I left the Lost Stone Forest after he raped and killed my sister who came to visit. In his rage, Zhou Yi clenched his teeth when he spoke to Martial Emperor Lei Ming. Martial Emperor Shiqi accused me of betraying the Lost Stone Forest so that he could get rid of me. Tears were pouring from Zhou Yi's twisted face as he spilled the beans. What Zhou Yi said made everyone gasp. Including the Lost Stone Forest disciples, almost everyone had their eyes set on Martial Emperor Shiqi now. There was disdain, mockery, and fury in those eyes. Although a couple of Lost Stone Forest disciples present had heard about Zhou Yi betraying the Lost Stone Forest, none of them knew the true reason behind it. To them, it was a mystery that was difficult to be explained. Today, the mystery seemed to be resolved. No matter if it were people from the Hidden Fog Island or the Martial Emperor disciples from the Cloud Continent, they stared at Martial Emperor Shiqi with disdain while whispering to one another. They shot him their most disgusted look. This Martial Emperor Shiqi's a notorious Martial Emperor powerhouse on the Cloud Continent. I can't believe he did such things, disgusting. That's right, he even did it to his direct disciples' family. Is there anything that he can't do? I thought of going to the Lost Stone Forest to become Martial Emperor Shiqi's disciple back then. Now that I think about it, I feel fortunate that I changed my mind. As opposed to Zhou Yi, you made the right decision. At that moment, even the 10 Lost Stone Forest disciples behind Martial Emperor Shiqi felt embarrassed. If not for their fear of Martial Emperor Shiqi lashing out at them, they would have run as far as they could. They would run so far away from Martial Emperor Shiqi and even pretend not to know him. Many of the Thundercloud Peak disciples led by Lan Bai glared at Martial Emperor Shiqi in anger while sympathizing with Zhou Yi. Martial Emperor Shiqi looked terrible. He looked gravely frightened now. Never had he thought that Zhou Yi would turn the tables on him. All he could feel now was that he had been wronged. Deep inside, he was dying to reveal the truth and tell everyone what had exactly happened. However, could he do that? As soon as he did that, he would undoubtedly agitate Zhou Yi and the mysterious tablet might end up in Martial Emperor Lei Ming's hands. That was not the outcome he wanted. Martial Emperor Shiqi did not fight back as he faced Zhou Yi's accusation and the contempt from the crowd. At that moment, everyone believed Zhou Yi over Martial Emperor Shiqi. HMPH. Suddenly, an explosive scoff was heard. It was so deafening that everyone's ears were hurt. As they snapped back to their senses and turned to the source of voice in an attempt to find out who had scoffed, a loud thud resounded. Bang! A gush of majestic shockwaves swept across and diverted everyone's attention. Subsequently, most of them noticed that Martial Emperor Shiqi had disappeared. Only some of them whose cultivation base was slightly higher clearly saw that Martial Emperor Shiqi had not disappeared. Instead, a powerful energy had smacked into him, severely injuring him. Among the crowd, Martial Emperor Lei Ming was the fastest to react. Before anyone could realize it, Martial Emperor Lei Ming stood before Zhou Yi. It was him who had attacked earlier. He had always been pleased with Zhou Yi as his direct disciple. However, someone had accused Zhou Yi today. The person made him suspect Zhou Yi's behavior for a second. At that moment, all he could feel was a raging fire that was coming out of him. As a result of his wrath, he attacked Martial Emperor Shichi directly. Martial Emperor Shichi, I don't want to see you ever again, I'll kill you in 3 breaths if you dare to come within my sight. As most of the people snapped back to their senses and had their eyes on Martial Emperor Lei Ming, he spoke slowly. His tone was firm and filled with terrifying brutality. At that moment, Martial Emperor Shichi, who had just consumed a healing medicinal pill, had a drastic change of expression. He escaped immediately without even waiting for his body to heal. He was faster than lightning, not appearing like a person who had just been injured. At that moment, peace was recovered on the vast ocean. The Martial Emperor's disciples from the Lost Stone Forest glanced at each other. They were in a pickle whether they should leave or stay. On the other hand, Duan Lingtian, who immersed himself in comprehending the Saint-grade martial tactic Colossal Arrow Light Arrow, took a while to wake up. It was the day of the Hidden Fog Island's Hidden Fog Martial Competition. Therefore, the people of Lingzan Peak departed late as they waited for him. Whoosh, 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 Martial Emperor Lingzan Yongwei led the people from Lingzan Peak. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian walked next to Yongwei together with the 2 ladies. They attracted a lot of attention along the way. Naturally, most of them had their eyes on the 2 ladies. Brother Lingtian, Hidden Fog Island has invested a lot in this Hidden Fog Martial Competition. The champion of this competition will obtain 10 Saint Stones. Yongwei said giddily to Duan Lingtian along the way. 10 Saint Stones. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up. The reason why he was interested in Hidden Fog Island's Hidden Fog Martial Competition was the Saint Stone, as it could boost his cultivation base. Now that he had entered the Martial Emperor stage and the medicinal efficacy of Rebirth Pill was wearing off, it was challenging for him to cultivate even though his talent was at the peak level on the Cloud Continent. However, it would be a different story if he possessed Saint Stones. His cultivation base would be elevated and would skyrocket with the Saint Stones. Soon, Duan Lingtian and the rest reached the ocean and headed far north of the Hidden Fog Island where the Hidden Fog Martial Competition was held. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian's pupils shrunk out of nowhere as if he had noticed something. A silhouette was dashing towards them at lightning speed. It was coming from far away and getting closer by the second. Duan Lingtian's face turned solemn as the person got closer. Martial Emperor Shichi, the person who was hurtling towards them, seemed like he was running for his life. He was the owner of the Cloud Continent's Lost Stone Forest, Martial Emperor Shichi. Chapter 1292. It only took Duan Lingtian a glance to recognize Martial Emperor Shichi. However, by the time he did, Martial Emperor Shichi had already passed by them far away. Including Martial Emperor Lingzan Yongwei, everyone from Lingzan Peak did not react to his appearance. Yongwei did not recognize him as he was in such a rush. He then proceeded to speak with Duan Lingtian, but the latter interrupted him. Please go ahead, I've something to deal with, so I'll catch up with all of you later, Duan Lingtian said to Yongwei and the 2 ladies via voice transmission. He left like a gust of wind without waiting for them to respond to him. He vanished before everyone, including Yongwei. Yongwei raised his eyebrows lightly just when he wanted to turn around to look at him leaving in a rush. Duan Lingtian had left him behind with the team once again. At that moment, however, Yongwei could faintly tell that he was dealing with something complicated. Although he had no idea what it was, he was sure of one thing. Duan Lingtian wanted to solve it himself without the help of the others. After taking a breath in, Yongwei called out to Li Fei and Ka and subsequently commanded the bunch of Lingzan Peak disciples to proceed with their journey. At that time, Li Fei and Ka heard the voice transmission coming from Duan Lingtian. They relieved their hanging hearts after hearing his message. They had no idea what was happening when he had said that he was leaving earlier. Now that he had informed them what was happening, they were relieved and were no longer worried about him. As Yongwei, Li Fei and Ka left with the rest, Duan Lingtian flew to chase Martial Emperor Shichi at his full speed. He was getting closer and closer to Martial Emperor Shichi. At his current level of ability without his spirit weapon, he was simply no match for Martial Emperor Shichi. Martial Emperor Shichi was on the 4th level Martial Emperor stage after all. As opposed to Duan Lingtian, who relied heavily on the profundities that he comprehended, apart from just profundities, Martial Emperor Shichi relied more on his origin energy. That was the most important part of his strength. If they were to use spirit weapons, unless he used the Colossal Arrow Light Arrow, Duan Lingtian did not have full confidence to defeat Martial Emperor Shichi. Martial Emperor Shichi was not using any spirit weapons as he sped ahead like he was running for his life. Although Duan Lingtian did not use any spirit weapons either, he was already powerful, so he beat Martial Emperor Shichi's pace. It'll take me a while to catch up to him at this speed. Flying at his full speed, he began to frown. He seemed to be unsatisfied with his current speed. Since he felt that he was slower, he needed a way to solve the issue of his pace. After thinking about it, he took action. Suddenly, he extended both his arms. A black bow appeared in his left hand and one could tell the bowstring was extraordinary. Meanwhile, a completely black arrow appeared in his right hand. It was the royal grade spirit archery set that he had crafted not too long ago. Bend, draw, and release. The rather simple movements came easily to Duan Lingtian. As he released the arrow in his hand, the inky black arrow looked like it turned into a lightning bolt as it tore forward at a terrifyingly fast speed. Naturally, that was just its starting pace. The arrow needed buffering time to accelerate even faster. Just when the arrow shot out, Duan Lingtian finally made his move during that critical moment. He shot out like a cannon, heading towards where the arrow was going. As the arrow was just picking up acceleration, its speed was not considered extremely fast. Therefore, it was a piece of cake for Duan Lingtian to catch up with it. After catching up with the arrow, Duan Lingtian did not put it away. Instead, he landed stably on it. At that moment, his feet seemed to be sprouted on the arrow where he was stuck on. Whoosh! The arrow was still accelerating. It was moving faster and faster with Duan Lingtian surfing on it. Out of the blue, a 5-colored light shield appeared around his body. It was the defensive martial skill 9 Dragon's barrier that he had performed. It blocked out the terrifyingly strong wind that was bearing against him. The arrow continued accelerating with him standing on it. Against the acceleration, the strong wind that was rushing at him was as sharp as a blade. He would not have been able to block it out without performing his defensive martial skill. Not long after that, Duan Lingtian caught up with the Martial Emperor on the dashing arrow as easy as pie. He not only caught up to Martial Emperor Shichi, but he actually surpassed him. Martial Emperor Lei Ming. Martial Emperor Shichi heard a whistling that passed by and surpassed him before arriving before him and blocking his way. His expression changed drastically when he managed to clearly see who it was. He thought that it was Martial Emperor Lei Ming who had changed his mind and chased him in an attempt to kill him. However, as he stopped in his rush, he realized that it was not Martial Emperor Lei Ming who was blocking his way. It was someone else. "It's you." Martial Emperor Shichi had a drastic change of expression again as he gaped at the purple-clad young man before him as if he had just seen a ghost. "It seems like you still remember me, Martial Emperor Shichi." At that moment, Duan Lingtian put the arrow under his feet away and hovered in the air. With ridicule filling his tone, he looked at Martial Emperor Shichi and said calmly, "It's definitely my pleasure." Martial Emperor Shichi's lips twitched when he heard what he said. It was impossible for him to forget the purple-clad young man before him. He remembered everything about the fight they had more than a year ago. Duan Lingtian had managed to challenge him with the help of a secret technique from a tablet. He even performed a level of strength that was more powerful than Martial Emperor Shichi's later on. Fortunately, Duan Lingtian lost his mind after that. Otherwise, Martial Emperor Shichi might have turned into dust on the Cloud Continent. Seeing the man appear before him, the first thing Martial Emperor Shichi did was to look around. He wanted to be sure of one thing. He wanted to ensure that the two young misses who had created anarchy at his Lost Stone Forest were not there. He was no match for even the weaker of the two young misses. Naturally, Duan Lingtian had no idea what Martial Emperor Shichi was thinking about. He asked in his deep voice while a gleam flashed in his eyes, "Is Tianwu still at your Lost Stone Forest?" Pain and concern seared his gut when he thought about Feng Tianwu. Back then, he had lost his mind before he managed to rescue Feng Tianwu from the Lost Stone Forest. According to Wang Ba, he had left the Lost Stone Forest right after he lost his mind and left Feng Tianwu behind. Tianwu had gone to the Lost Stone Forest willingly for the sake of his sect, but he had left her behind during such a critical time. Although he had done so because he lost his mind, he still felt guilty. Now that he was confronting Martial Emperor Shichi again, all he could think about was Feng Tianwu, not the Devilseal tablet that he had lost. Martial Emperor Shichi did not respond to Duan Lingtian. Instead, a glow burned in his eyes while he exclaimed coldly, "I'd never have imagined that you'd have such a major elevation of your abilities throughout the year. With the help of a spirit weapon, you're even faster than I am without a spirit weapon." The will to kill was rumbling deep in his eyes. He was sure of one thing from what the purple-clad young man's question. He was sure that Duan Lingtian had yet to see the lady in yellow and the girl in black. Otherwise, it was impossible that he had no inkling about Feng Tianwu's whereabouts. I'm asking you, is Tianwu still at your Lost Stone Forest? Duan Lingtian's voice went deeper upon realizing that Martial Emperor Shiqi had ignored him. If something were to happen to Tianwu, I, Duan Lingtian, will end your Lost Stone Forest. The purple cloak around Duan Lingtian fluttered as he growled. At the same time, he gripped the royal grade spirit archery set even tighter. 5 colored flashes of lightning surrounded his body like countless electric snakes slithering around his body rapidly. It only took a glance to bedazzle anyone watching him. End my Lost Stone Forest. Duan Lingtian's threat stunned Martial Emperor Shiqi at first, and he then laughed out loud. His laughter was filled with disdain. Do you really think you can do that? He might have been frightened if Duan Lingtian had either the young lady in yellow or the girl in black with him. However, he was fearless of the man alone despite his terrifying speed with the help of a spirit weapon. After all, he did not have that mysterious tablet to depend on now. As soon as Martial Emperor Shiqi was done speaking, the ferocious gleam that was sparkling in Duan Lingtian's eyes appeared to shoot out like electric snakes. At the same time, his hands were moving at lightning speed. He picked up the bow, drew the string and got ready to release. The entire flow of his movements was so smooth. 5 colored flames rumbled around his body all of a sudden. As the flames spread to the royal grade spirit archery set in his hands, most of the sparks gathered at the tip of the arrow. The energy was getting more and more condensed. Later on, it seemed like it had turned into a tiny ball of a sun that was so bright that it could hurt one's eyes. A terrifying aura subsequently emanated out. At that moment, the smile on Martial Emperor Shiqi's face faded. A 7-foot spear appeared in his hand. It was his quasi-royal grade spirit weapon spear. Energy swept across his body as he brandished the spear, while the energy around it was like pythons slithering rapidly, ready to attack any time. Having confidence is a good thing, but it's bad when it turns into arrogance. You managed to escape the other day, but you won't be that lucky today. The murderous intent grew in Martial Emperor Shiqi as he wanted nothing more than to kill Duan Lingtian. He had to kill him. If he did not, he would be dead if Duan Lingtian met the 2 young misses one day. He shuddered internally when he recalled the lady clad in yellow and the girl in black. If he could, he hoped that he would never see them again in his life. You want to kill me? That depends if you, Martial Emperor Shiqi, are capable of doing that. Duan Lingtian smirked. When he was done speaking, a loud twang reverberated and the air vibrated with a tremor. Circles of waves rippled in the air. The loud twang had come from the bowstring in Duan Lingtian's hand. At the same time of the twang rang out, the arrow was released. Chapter 1293, Colossal Arrow Light Arrow. The arrow in Duan Lingtian's hand shot out like a bolt of lightning. It was so fast that Martial Emperor Shiqi could not react in time. Whoosh, pooh, hmph. The sound of the arrow shooting out before it pierced something and a low moan of pain were heard almost simultaneously. Martial Emperor Shiqi, who did not react in time, held the arrow that was shot out in his hand. His hand that was pierced by the arrow had a terrifying and bloody wound. Fresh blood was spurting out of the wound continuously. His hand was wounded by the arrow. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Martial Emperor Shiqi's expression changed drastically due to his fear of Duan Lingtian's arrow's lightning speed and power. At the same time, Duan Lingtian shot the arrow another 3 times consecutively. The arrow was the same arrow that he had initially shot out. He shot 4 times, and the arrow returned to him 4 times. Everything happened in just a blink of an eye. Pooh, 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 pooh. Martial Emperor Shiqi's other arm and both legs had terrifying and bloody wounds. His face had turned gravely pale. You. His eyes were filled with fear as he looked at Duan Lingtian in pain. He did not expect the purple-clad young man would become so powerful. It had only been over a year since they last met. Even without the help of the mysterious tablet, his ability had already surpassed him now. He was shot by the first arrow because he did not manage to react in time. Later on, Duan Lingtian shot the arrow 3 times consecutively. Although he attempted to dodge the arrow as soon as it was shot out, the arrow seemed to have eyes. It pierced through both his arms and legs. The terrifying and powerful arrow skill caused fear that came from his core to rise. He knew the purple-clad young man before him was a changed man. He was not a match for Duan Lingtian. How How did you become so powerful? It has only been over a year. Although Martial Emperor Shichi was afraid, he also felt unwilling. The person who was like an ant compared to him when he was not using the tablet a year ago had defeated him with his own ability now. Martial Emperor Shichi felt as though he had wasted his life. Duan Lingtian ignored Martial Emperor Shichi and enunciated each word with a cold expression on his face. I'm going to ask you one last time, is Tian Wu still at your Lost Stone Forest? A hint of killing intent was evident on his face as he asked his question. He had made up his mind. He would not hold back if Martial Emperor Shichi failed to cooperate with him. She's not, Martial Emperor Shichi replied immediately as soon as Duan Lingtian was done speaking. He was scared now that he had witnessed Duan Lingtian's current ability. She's not there. Duan Lingtian's face turned cold as energy began to rumble on his body again. 5 colored bolts of lightning ran rampant on the bow in his left hand and the arrow in his right hand. They were exuding a terrifying aura. Kai Huo took her away, Martial Emperor Shichi said immediately as he shuddered. At this moment, he had lost all image of a Martial Emperor powerhouse. He looked more like a wounded dog. Kai Huo, Duan Lingtian frowned. Kai Huo is Hidden Fog Island's first revered elder. His position is just below the 3 island masters on Hidden Fog Island. Back then, he came to Lost Stone Forest as Hidden Fog Island's messenger to inform me that the Hidden Fog martial competition would be brought forward, Martial Emperor Shichi said. At that time, he saw your partner's talent and brought her with him. If everything went as planned, your partner should be in Hidden Fog Island now. Tian Wu, she's in Hidden Fog Island. When Duan Lingtian heard Martial Emperor Shichi's words, he turned solemn. He asked with his deep voice, are you telling the truth? If you don't believe me, I'm willing to take the 9 heavenly tribulation oath. If I lie, I'll be killed by the lightning penalty, Martial Emperor Shichi said. Duan Lingtian finally believed him. He felt relieved after hearing his words. Tian Wu was fine. Moreover, he believed he would meet Tian Wu soon as long as she was still on the Hidden Fog Island. This was good news to him. I haven't told Ka and Little Feier about Tian Wu. Ka should be fine with it, but I'm not sure if Little Feier will get angry. Duan Lingtian felt troubled when he thought about Li Fei who might get jealous. He knew very well what he meant to Tian Wu. He had feelings for Tian Wu too after years of being together. He realized Tian Wu had occupied a portion of his heart that was the same amount as Ka and Li Fei without knowing when. Meanwhile, Martial Emperor Shichi was hovering in the air. He had recovered much after consuming a healing medicinal pill. However, it would take some time for his pierced limbs to fully heal. The healing medicinal pill he had just consumed was just a grade 1 life recovery pill after all. If he had Duan Lingtian's royal grade resurrection pill, such minor injuries would heal in just a blink of an eye. Although Martial Emperor Shichi had recovered a little, he did not dare to leave. He had a complicated expression on his face when he looked at the purple-clad young man. He was filled with fear. A year ago, this purple-clad young man could fight him with the help of the secret technique from the mysterious tablet. A year later, he did not need any secret techniques and defeated him with his ability alone. Soon after, Duan Lingtian regained his senses. He looked at Martial Emperor Shichi and asked in his deep voice, where's my Devil Seal tablet? Devil Seal tablet. When Martial Emperor Shichi heard Duan Lingtian's words, his heart jolted and was filled with bitterness. The thing he was most worried about had finally happened. Initially, he thought if he survived, he would obtain the mysterious tablet from Zhou Yi if Duan Lingtian did not remember the tablet. However, things did not go as he wished. Duan Lingtian remembered the mysterious tablet. So, it's called the Devil Seal tablet. Martial Emperor Shichi sighed. The Devil Seal tablet isn't with me. Martial Emperor Shichi forced a smile as he faced Duan Lingtian who was glaring at him. It's not with you. Duan Lingtian smirked. Naturally, he did not believe Martial Emperor Shichi's words. What kind of joke was that? Martial Emperor Shichi was Lost Stone Forest's owner. He had found out about the shocking secret hidden in the Devil Seal tablet when they fought previously. He had left the Devil Seal tablet behind at the Lost Stone Forest. Now, Martial Emperor Shichi said the tablet was not with him. Who would believe that? It's really not with me. Martial Emperor Shichi had a forced smile on his face. He could guess the thoughts in Duan Lingtian's mind. I admit the Devil Seal tablet was in my possession when you left back then. However, while I was studying the tablet, I was deceived by Zhou Yi. He had replaced the real Devil Seal tablet with a fake and took the real one away. I can swear on the 9 heavenly tribulation as well. There was a hint of killing intent in Martial Emperor Shichi's eyes when he spoke. Naturally, it was not aimed at Duan Lingtian. The killing intent was directed at his traitorous direct disciple, Zhou Yi. Zhou Yi. Duan Lingtian frowned. He was the one who took Tian Wu to your Lost Stone Forest. Isn't he your direct disciple? He was my direct disciple. However, from the moment he deceived me and took the Devil Seal tablet away, he's no longer my direct disciple. He doesn't belong to the Lost Stone Forest anymore, Martial Emperor Shichi said. Did you manage to find him? Duan Lingtian asked with his deep voice. I looked for him, but it was to no avail. However, I saw him today, Martial Emperor Shichi said honestly. He could guess Duan Lingtian's purpose of being here. He must be here for the Hidden Fog martial competition. Duan Lingtian would meet Zhou Yi even if he did not disclose this information to him. Therefore, he decided to tell him. He might be able to curry favor with Duan Lingtian this way. Who knew, Duan Lingtian might spare his life. You saw him today. He's on Hidden Fog Island? Duan Lingtian asked as his eyes lit up. He was a little surprised. Yes, Martial Emperor Shichi nodded. He's on Hidden Fog Island. He's here for the Hidden Fog martial competition with a Martial Emperor powerhouse from Cloud Continent. You didn't manage to regain the Devil Seal tablet? Duan Lingtian frowned. The Martial Emperor with him is much more powerful than I am. Martial Emperor Shichi disclosed everything, including Zhou Yi's threat, his plan, and his fear toward Martial Emperor Lei Ming. Martial Emperor Lei Ming? Duan Lingtian nodded and casually glanced at Martial Emperor Shichi. Since you're being so cooperative, I won't kill you today. I hope you won't offend me again. Otherwise, I won't show you any mercy. After finding out Tian Wu and the Devil Seal tablet's whereabouts, Duan Lingtian was eager to head over to the Hidden Fog martial competition's venue. He was sure the Devil Seal tablet was there. However, he had speculated differently for Tian Wu. Since Tian Wu was taken away by the Hidden Fog Island's first revered elder, even if she's not participating in today's Hidden Fog martial competition, she would definitely be there, Duan Lingtian speculated. However, what he did not know was not only Feng Tian Wu, but even Hidden Fog Island's first revered elder Kai Huo had left the island due to certain reasons. Duan Lingtian prepared to leave. Wait. At this moment, Martial Emperor Shichi stopped Duan Lingtian. Is there anything else? Duan Lingtian frowned. I owe you one since you didn't kill me today. There's something that I must tell you, Martial Emperor Shichi said. He proceeded to speak as Duan Lingtian looked at him curiously. Actually, 2 powerful Demon Emperor powerhouses came to my Lost Stone Forest not too long ago. What does that have to do with me? Duan Lingtian's frown deepened. He did not have time to listen to Martial Emperor Shichi's nonsensical babble. They were there for you. However, what Martial Emperor Shichi said next stunned Duan Lingtian. They were there for me. Who are they? 2 Demon Emperor powerhouses. From what he recalled, it seemed like he did not know any Demon Emperor powerhouses. I don't know who they are. It was a young lady and a girl. The young lady wore yellow and looked about 15 or 16 while the little girl wore white and looked mischievous. Chapter 1294. Yellow-clad girl. Mischievous. A familiar figure instantly emerged in Duan Lingtian's mind after he heard Martial Emperor Shichi's words. Han Shui Nai. Shui Nai's back. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up. It was not difficult for him to guess that the yellow-clad girl was most likely Han Shui Nai. He looked at Martial Emperor Shichi and asked, what about the white-clad little girl? Are there any distinctive features? How did the yellow-clad girl address her? Martial Emperor Shichi took a while to remember before he finally said, the yellow-clad girl called her Little White. Little White. Duan Lingtian was shaken. He was just guessing earlier that the yellow-clad girl was Han Shui Nai. However, he was certain now. Was Little White not the little white python from back then? It seems like Little White managed to transform into a human, and she took the form of a little girl. A slight smile hung on the corner of Duan Lingtian's mouth. The little thing from back then had already grown so much, he could not help but feel a little sentimental. Shui Nai brought Little White. I wonder if Little Black and Little Gold came along. Duan Lingtian could not help but think of the other 2 little fellows when he thought about Shui Nai and Little White. The 2 little fellows were naturally the Little Black Python and the Little Gold Mouse. Back then, the 3 little fellows were left with Shui Nai. They had been away for so many years. After Duan Lingtian heard that they were back, the memories hidden deep in the recesses of his mind resurfaced. After we're finished with the matters on the overseas Saint Islands, I'll bring Ka, Little Fair, and Tien Wu back to Cloud Continent. After so many years, I really do miss them. Duan Ling Tien planned in his heart. Han Shui Nai's figure and the figures of the three little fellows flashed in his mind one after another. According to Martial Emperor Shi Qi's words, it seems like Shui Nai is still the same. As for the three little fellows, I'm afraid I won't be able to recognize them now since they've transformed into humans. Duan Ling Tian's heart pounded when he thought of this. You said they're Demon Emperor powerhouses. Duan Ling Tian recalled Martial Emperor Shi Qi's earlier words and looked at him. The yellow-clad girl was the leader of the duo, the white-clad little girl easily defeated me. With her strength, she could have killed me if she wanted to. Martial Emperor Shi Qi smiled bitterly and said, what are they if they aren't Demon Emperor powerhouses? Although human martial artists might be able to maintain their appearance after breaking through to the martial monarch stage, the yellow-clad girl only looked about 16 or 17 years of age. Was it possible for one to break through to the martial monarch stage at 15 or 16 years old and maintain her youthful looks? As for the white-clad little girl, she did not look like she was older than 10 years old. It was even more unlikely for one to break through to the martial monarch stage before the age of 10. That was why he was certain they were demons who had transformed into humans. Little White is so strong. Duan Ling Tian was shocked when he heard Martial Emperor Shi Qi's words. He did not expect the little white python would become so powerful. In his excitement, Duan Ling Tian left Martial Emperor Shi Qi and turned around to catch up to the people from Lingzan Peak. That's surprising, even Little White broke through to the Martial Emperor stage and became a Demon Emperor powerhouse. It would presumably be the same for Little Black and Little Gold, they should have become Demon Emperors as well. And Shui Nai too. Duan Ling Tian felt a bit sentimental when he thought about that mischievous yellow-clad girl. He still remembered he met Han Shui Nai at the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's 7-star sword sect. At that time, he had guessed that Han Shui Nai was probably a young miss from a rich family and a powerful force in Darken Dynasty. Later, he discovered Han Shui Nai was not from the Darken Dynasty. Then, he speculated that Han Shui Nai was from Cloud Continent's ancient Han clan, but that did not seem like it. Shui Nai shouldn't be from Cloud Continent, there are only two possibilities. She's either from the overseas Saint Islands or the Dao Martial Saint Land. Between the two possibilities, Duan Ling Tian preferred the latter. Han Shui Nai was from the Dao Martial Saint Land. Dao Martial Saint Land. In Duan Ling Tian's opinion, it was a strange place filled with the unknowns. There were many powerhouses there, even Cloud Continent's Martial Emperor powerhouses were only equivalent to an innate void restoration stage martial artist there. The innate void restoration stage was nothing in the Dao Martial Saint Land. Duan Ling Tian was familiar with some things on Dao Martial Saint Land thanks to Wang Ba's soul that was hidden in his body. Wang Ba claimed he was a saint stage powerhouse. Duan Ling Tian's heart was as calm as the sea he was currently flying across. He did not catch up to the people from Lingzan Peak because the people from Lingzan Peak had already arrived at the venue of the Hidden Fog Martial Competition. It was held at a vast and calm area of the sea. Currently, the sky above that area was filled with people, it was densely packed. Duan Ling Tian could not help but wonder if everyone from the Hidden Fog Island was here. Duan Ling Tian quickly found the two women and the people from Lingzan Peak and flew over to them. You've resolved it? Yang Wei asked with a smile. Duan Ling Tian nodded. Meanwhile, at a place close to them, Zhou Yu, who was standing behind Martial Emperor Lei Ming and the group of people from Thundercloud Peak, suddenly changed his expression. Why's he here? Zhou Yu's expression turned gloomy as he stared at the purple-clad young man in the distance. He was naturally familiar with that purple-clad young man. Duan Ling Tian was the one who had broken into Lost Stone Forest and tried to save Feng Tianwu whom he had kidnapped. The sect leader of Ling Tian sect, Duan Ling Tian. When he saw Duan Ling Tian, he immediately thought of the fierce battle between Duan Ling Tian and Martial Emperor Shi Qi. Right, his stone tablet is already in my hands, he can no longer rely on the stone tablet. I have nothing to be afraid of. Soon after, Zhou Yi calmed down. Put aside the fact that his opponent could no longer rely on the mysterious stone tablet and use the secret technique, his strength was not what it used to be. Currently, he had broken through to the Martial Emperor stage. His strength had improved a lot compared to the past. I've studied the stone tablet for so long, but I still can't figure out its secrets, it seems like even the gods are helping me by leading him to me. Zhou Yi's gaze on Duan Lingtian suddenly brightened as though he saw an extremely precious treasure. Previously, he had witnessed the purple-clad young man using the secret technique from the stone and the power it granted him. Therefore, he concluded that his opponent knew how to use the stone tablet. Once I learn how to use the stone tablet and the secret technique, coupled with my current cultivation, even Martial Emperor Lei Ming won't be a match for me. Zhou Yi could not help but feel excited when he thought of this. While Zhou Yi was staring at Duan Lingtian with glowing eyes, Duan Lingtian was also looking at him. However, Duan Lingtian merely glanced at him before he turned to look at the old man standing in front of him. He's the master of Thundercloud Peak, Martial Emperor Lei Ming. Brother Yang. Duan Lingtian looked at Yang Wei and asked through voice transmission, that Martial Emperor Lei Ming, is he very strong? Very strong. Although Yang Wei did not know why Duan Lingtian was suddenly interested in Martial Emperor Lei Ming, he still responded. Among all the known Martial Emperor powerhouses on Cloud Continent, Martial Emperor Lei Ming's strength is on par with Martial Emperor Yuhan. Both of them are ranked top 3 among the strongest martial emperors. So strong. Duan Lingtian was shocked when he heard that. He had witnessed Martial Emperor Yuhan's strength, she was very powerful. With his current strength, even if Martial Emperor Yuhan did not utilize her spirit weapon and presented him with an opportunity to use the colossal arrow light arrow, he would be at most evenly matched with her. He managed to break Martial Emperor Yuhan's heaven and earth wipeout with his arrow previously because Martial Emperor Yuhan was unprepared. If he had aimed his arrow at Martial Emperor Yuhan, she would have regained her senses in time and utilized her spirit weapon to block that shot. Once Martial Emperor Yuhan utilized her spirit weapon, killing him would be easy. His current strength was equivalent to the strength of Martial Emperor Yuhan when she was not using her spirit weapon. He was stronger than a 4th-level Martial Emperor stage martial artist but weaker than an ordinary 5th-level Martial Emperor stage powerhouse. It seems that my only hope is to wait for the Hidden Fog martial competition to begin so that I can fight this Zhou Yi, only then will I have the chance to kill him and snatch the Devil Seal tablet, Duan Lingtian secretly thought. With Martial Emperor Lei Ming there, he could not fight them directly. Otherwise, he might die. Meanwhile, Zhou Yi was also thinking about how he could find a chance to threaten Duan Lingtian so he would reveal the secrets of the mysterious stone tablet. Su, comma. Suddenly, the sound of wind whistling came from the distance. 6 figures were flying toward them from the distance, getting closer and closer. Among the 6 people, a young man dressed in a green robe was in the lead. He was holding a folding fan in his hand and wore a silk kerchief on his head. He looked exactly like a scholar, radiating a gentle and suave demeanor. An old man, a middle-aged man, and 3 young men followed behind him. The 6 of them looked mighty and gave off a strong sense of oppression when they approached. Many people were overwhelmed to the extent that they could not breathe. 5 Martial Emperor stage powerhouses. Duan Lingtian stared at the 5 people behind the young scholar in surprise. The 5 of them deliberately did not weaken their aura and their cultivation base at the Martial Emperor stage. As long as one was above the Martial Emperor stage, they would be able to sense it. Something's wrong, there should be 6 of them. Soon, Duan Lingtian's eyes landed on the young scholar at the lead who was surrounded by the 5 Martial Emperor powerhouses. He must also be at the Martial Emperor stage. Moreover, he was definitely stronger than the 5 Martial Emperor powerhouses. He's the Hidden Fog Island's 3rd island master. Duan Lingtian guessed inwardly. Based on what he knew, the Hidden Fog martial competition today was hosted by the Hidden Fog Island's 3rd island master. At this moment, a voice filled with admiration was clearly heard by Duan Lingtian. Martial Emperor Qingzan. Chapter 1295. The voice filled with admiration was from Martial Emperor Lingzan, Yang Wei. Martial Emperor Qingzan. When Duan Lingtian's gaze landed on the young scholar again, he suddenly realized the opponent was not the 3rd island master of Hidden Fog Island. However, someone whom Yang Wei admired could not be as simple as he appeared to be. It should be noted that even when Yang Wei faced Martial Emperor Lei Ming or Martial Emperor Yuhan, he did not reveal such an expression. He could see that Yang Wei truly admired Martial Emperor Qingzan from the bottom of his heart. However, there was one thing that Duan Lingtian was not privy to. Even the word, Zan, from Yang Hui's honorific title, Lingzan, was taken from Martial Emperor Qingzan's honorific title. Lingzan and Qingzan only differed in one word. It represented Yang Hui's admiration for Martial Emperor Qingzan. Greetings, Lord Qingzan. Shortly after, Duan Lingtian witnessed a shocking scene. He saw that most of Cloud Continent's martial emperor powerhouses, including Yongwei, martial emperor Lingzan, bowed and greeted the young scholar. Even martial emperor Lei Ming and martial emperor Yuhan were no exception. They also bowed at the young scholar. This scene shocked a lot of people. This martial emperor Qingzan, who's he exactly? Their hearts were shocked. Naturally, there were some who had heard of martial emperor Qingzan. Martial emperor Qingzan is the #1 martial emperor on Cloud Continent. He represents the peak of humanity on Cloud Continent. The #1 martial emperor on Cloud Continent. Many people were shocked again as someone introduced martial emperor Qingzan. It turns out that he's the #1 martial emperor on Cloud Continent, martial emperor Qingzan. I've heard some of Cloud Continent's martial emperor powerhouses mentioned him before. His cultivation base is above the 7th level martial emperor stage, a Hidden Fog Islands martial artist said. 7th level martial emperor stage? Does that mean he's comparable to our Hidden Fog Islands 3rd island master? Many of the Hidden Fog Islands martial artists asked in surprise. There was a rumor on the Hidden Fog Island that all 3 island masters were above the 7th level martial emperor stage. Their strength was truly profound. I really can't tell. A seemingly weak young scholar is actually Cloud Continent's #1 martial emperor, a group of Hidden Fog Island martial artists was whispering among themselves. Their faces were filled with shock. #1 among all the martial emperors. When Duan Lingtian heard the whisperings around him, his eyes widened in shock as he stared at the young scholar, martial emperor Qingzan, who was smiling at all the martial emperor powerhouses. This martial emperor Qingzan is the #1 martial emperor on Cloud Continent. Does that mean his current status on Cloud Continent is equivalent to the rebirthed martial emperor 20,000 years ago? Duan Lingtian felt astonished in his heart. Haha, Qingzan, you came early. Before Duan Lingtian regained his senses, a hearty laughter that sounded like a resonating bell came from afar. It was as loud as thunder. Many of the Hidden Fog Islands martial artists with lower cultivation base instantly changed their expressions. Some even ruptured their eardrums, blood spilling out of their ears. When the laughter that sounded like a resonating bell stopped, a gust of strong wind blew past. A figure appeared in front of everyone. It was a burly man with a curly beard who wore a bronze armor. His face was grim, his hips were as strong as a bear, and his back was as supple as a tiger. He stood there like an iron tower and gave off a sense of oppression. Those with lower cultivation base found it hard to breathe. After the burly man with a curly beard's appearance, 10 more people appeared behind him. 3 of them stood slightly to the front while the remaining 7 stood behind. It distinctively showed their identities and statuses. Man Wu, martial emperor Qingzan nodded in greeting at the burly man with a curly beard. The burly man with a curly beard who was known as Man Wu said bluntly, Qingzan, I lost to you 3 years ago. I think I've improved a lot during this 3 years. When will we battle again? I still want to defeat you and redeem myself. After he spoke, the group who had just learned about martial emperor Qingzan, including Duan Lingtian, could still maintain their composure. However, the others were stunned. The shock was apparent on the faces of the other martial emperor powerhouses and demon emperor powerhouses, including Yongwei, martial emperor Lei Ming, martial emperor Yuhan, and martial emperor Chuli, who had known about martial emperor Qingzan's background. Demon emperor Man Wu, the #1 demon emperor on Cloud Continent, he lost to Lord Qingzan 3 years ago. Many people were shocked. Even the 10 people standing behind demon emperor Man Wu looked shocked. It was obvious this was the first time Demon Emperor Man Wu had spoken about it. It seems that only Martial Emperor Qingzan and Demon Emperor Man Wu knew about it. However, Demon Emperor Man Wu seemed to be a genuine person since he could speak about it so candidly in front of so many people. After a while, Duan Lingtian understood the situation. Man Wu, I merely won by a small margin in that battle 3 years ago. If you want to fight again, I'm more than willing to oblige. However, it'll have to wait until the Hidden Fog martial competition is over. Martial Emperor Qingzan was still smiling even when faced with Demon Emperor Man Wu's challenge. All right, Demon Emperor Man Wu nodded quickly before he and his 10 disciples stood to the side. Lord Man Wu, At this time, the Demon Emperor powerhouses from Cloud Continent bowed toward Demon Emperor Man Wu. Demon Emperor Man Wu's status among the demons on Cloud Continent was equivalent to the status of Martial Emperor Qingzan among the humans on Cloud Continent. A Martial Emperor powerhouse from Cloud Continent who came to cultivate on the Hidden Fog Island exclaimed, I didn't think Lord Qingzan had defeated Demon Emperor Manwu 3 years ago. Does that mean Lord Qingzan is more than the #1 martial emperor on Cloud Continent? He's actually the #1 person on Cloud Continent right now. #1 on Cloud Continent. For a time, not only did the group of people from Cloud Continent looked at Qingzan in admiration, but even the people from Hidden Fog Island looked at Qingzan in admiration. This martial emperor Qingzan is really low-key. Even the 5 people behind him didn't know he had defeated Demon Emperor Manwu. Duan Lingtian had long noticed the shocked expression on the faces of the 5 martial emperor powerhouses standing behind martial emperor Qingzan. It was obvious they were shocked by this revelation as well. At this time, apart from the 10 people from Lost Stone Forest who left with martial emperor Shiqi, almost everyone from Cloud Continent who came to participate in the Hidden Fog martial competition was here. Now, we just have to wait for the 3rd Island Master. The Hidden Fog martial competition will officially begin once the 3rd Island Master arrives, many Hidden Fog Island's martial artists said. It seems that our Hidden Fog Island's core disciples haven't arrived yet. Someone seemed to have noticed this. There are quite a number of Inner Island disciples and Outer Island disciples who came to watch, but we haven't seen any of the core disciples. The Hidden Fog Island's disciples were separated into 3 groups. They were the core disciples, Inner Island disciples, and Outer Island disciples. They could be identified by the order token that they carried around on their waists. There were a lot of Inner Island disciples and Outer Island disciple, but none of the core disciples could be seen. "They're here," someone yelled before the sound of wind whistling in the distance was heard. Along with the sound of wind whistling, a few figures traveling at lightning speed appeared. In just a blink of an eye, the figures arrived. All these people had one thing in common. All of them had an order token on their waists that was carved with the word, core. It was obvious they were the Hidden Fog Island's core disciples. One of the core disciples' eyes lit up as though he had discovered something. Following that, he arrived before the group of people from Yuhan Valley and looked at Martial Emperor Yuhan. He said with a smile, "Senior Yuhan." "Young Master Chen," Martial Emperor Yuhan said. She was extremely courteous when she spoke to that Hidden Fog Island's core disciple. This was because he had another shocking identity. Apart from being a Hidden Fog Island's core disciple, he was also the only son of the 2nd Island Master. Moreover, the 2nd Island Master only had him when he was old. As such, the love the 2nd Island Master of Hidden Fog Island had for his son was very obvious. "Senior Yuhan, where are the 2 junior sisters?" The person who stood in front of Martial Emperor Yuhan was Hidden Fog Island's core disciple, Chen Ji. Among the Hidden Fog Island's core disciples, Chen Ji might not be the strongest, but he was definitely the most lecherous. Ever since Chen Ji discovered that Yuhan Valley had 2 extremely beautiful female disciples, he had lusted after them. As for the fiancé of the 2 female disciples, he was not bothered about it. In his opinion, he could just kill him. When Chen Ji spoke, he began to search for the women behind Martial Emperor Yuhan. However, there were only 8 people standing behind her, and all of them looked mediocre to him. They did not interest him at all. "Young Master Chen, I'm afraid I can't fulfill the promise I made that day." Martial Emperor Yuhan sighed. Chen Ji's expression changed dramatically. "Senior Yuhan, what do you mean? Are you regretting your decision?" Back then, Chen Ji had immediately gone to Martial Emperor Yuhan and asked for their hands in marriage once he heard there were 2 extremely beautiful women under Martial Emperor Yuhan. Martial Emperor Yuhan had made him a promise, but now, she was saying she could not fulfill the promise. "I don't regret it. My disciples got carried away and ran away with a boy from Lingzan Peak. They had deserted Yuhan Valley. I can no longer decide these things for them." As Martial Emperor Yuhan spoke, she looked at the people from Lingzan Peak. Chen Ji followed Martial Emperor Yuhan's line of sight. With one look, he was dumbstruck. God, there were such beauties in this world. 2 graceful figures appeared before Chen Ji's eyes. He was completely stupefied. One of the women wore a lavender blouse. She had long, flowing hair and a jade belt wrapped around her slim waist. Although her slender legs were covered, it could not hide her peerless beauty. Her almost perfect face, in particular, was dazzling. A pair of curved eyebrows, expressive eyes, tall and straight nose, and a cherry-like mouth. All of it attracted Chen Ji. Chapter 1296. Chen Ji's breathing quickened as he reluctantly shifted his gaze away from the purple-clad woman to the other woman standing next to her. This woman had a hint of girlish innocence on her face and the obedience of a pretty girl from a humble background. People could not help but adore her for it. She had a pretty face, and flaws were difficult to be found on her face. The best, the best. Chen Ji's eyes were glowing. At this moment, he was just short of drooling. Chen Ji gulped and asked hastily, Senior Yuhan, is that them? That's right, that's them. The purple-clad youth beside them is their fiancé, Duan Lingtian, Martial Emperor Yuhan said unhurriedly as she nodded. It was as though she was not worried even if the world was in chaos. When Martial Emperor Yuhan finished speaking, Chen Ji disappeared like a gust of wind. When he reappeared, he stood before the group of people from Lingzan Peak. More accurately, he appeared in front of Ka and Li Fei. "Two junior sister, your master has given your hand in marriage to me, just wait for a few days for my father to come out from his closed-door cultivation, and we can get married," Chen Ji said to Ka and Li Fei with what he thought was a dazzling smile. When Ka and Li Fei heard Chen Ji's words, they could not help but feel stunned. They simultaneously looked at Martial Emperor Yuhan standing at the distance and realized that Martial Emperor Yuhan was also looking at them. Martial Emperor Yuhan's eyes were filled with indifference. Ka and Li Fei's faces immediately sank. "You have the wrong person, Sister Ka and I do have a master, but she died a few years ago," Li Fei said faintly to Chen Ji. "Your junior sister Li Fei, aren't you?" Chen Ji, eyes were passionate as he sized Li Fei up. As the saying goes, once a master, forever a parent. It's unwise for you to sever your relationship with your master for a trash. Trash. Li Fei's face turned cold when she heard Chen Ji's words. How could someone else insult her man? Ka's face also darkened as her eyes gleamed coldly. Every dragon had a reverse scale, touch it and one would die. Duan Lingtian was undoubtedly their reverse scale. When the two women were about to attack, a tall figure stood in front of them like a mountain and shielded them behind him. It gave them a sense of security. That person was none other than Duan Lingtian. "Get lost," Duan Lingtian said slowly as he coolly glanced at Chen Ji. At this moment, the smile on Chen Ji's face was completely frozen. As a core disciple of Hidden Fog Island and also the son of the second island master of Hidden Fog Island, even the Hidden Fog Island's elders had to show him respect, let alone the other core disciples, inner island disciples or outer island disciples. For the first time in his life, someone dared to ask him to get lost. "Boy, do you know who I am?" Chen Ji stared at Duan Lingtian with a darkened face. "I don't care who you are," Duan Lingtian said coolly. When he was done speaking, his arms moved, and he attacked as fast as lightning. In just a blink of an eye, a five-colored force left his arm and landed on Chen Ji. Bang! A loud noise sounded, and the unguarded Chen Ji was blasted away. Puff! Wah! Comma! Chen Ji flew back like a shot arrow, blood spurting out. The blood splattered everywhere like blooming roses. It was so red that it was almost purple. It was obvious that he was suffering from a serious internal injury. Silence. The entire place was silent. Even the Hidden Fog Island's disciples who usually hung out with Chen Ji were so shocked that it took them a while to check on Chen Ji's injury. Well. The first to react was Martial Emperor Yuhan. Martial Emperor Yuhan looked at Duan Lingtian and repeated the word, "well," 3 times before she added, "getting angry because of your women, how bold of you, Duan Lingtian." "Thanks for your compliment, Martial Emperor Yuhan." Duan Lingtian glanced at Martial Emperor Yuhan indifferently. He had long guessed that Chen Ji would come to find fault with him because of Martial Emperor Yuhan's instigation. However, did Martial Emperor Yuhan really think a mere second-level Martial Emperor stage martial artist could threaten him? Maybe, his background is not simple. Suddenly, a thought appeared in Duan Lingtian's mind. However, his face remained calm without the slightest hint of fear. If he allowed the other party to disrespect his women because he was afraid of the other party's identity and background, then he was not a man of integrity. Senior Brother Chen. At this time, many Hidden Fog Island's disciples finally regained their senses and flew toward Chen Ji. Although Chen Ji's personality was objectionable, and most of the Hidden Fog Island's core disciples were dissatisfied with him, no one was willing to offend him because of his status. Therefore, many people rushed over to fawn over him because of his status. This was the best opportunity to do so. Many Hidden Fog Island's disciples set off and rushed to Chen Ji like a group of dogs fighting over a bone. It looked very exaggerated. Duan Lingtian. No one noticed that Martial Emperor Qingzan had lifted his eyebrows and glanced at Duan Lingtian while Martial Emperor Yuhan was speaking to Duan Lingtian. He shifted his gaze after a glance, but there was a hint of surprise in the depth of his eyes. "So he's Duan Lingtian, Martial Emperor Qingzhan muttered. It was as though he knew Duan Lingtian. When the Hidden Fog Island's martial artists came to their senses, they looked at Duan Lingtian and whispered, "This young man's so bold. He dared to hurt Chen Ji." Without exception, all of their eyes were filled with pity when they looked at Duan Lingtian as though he would suffer from a revenge and die immediately. Chen Ji is the only son of the second island master, not to mention that he might not be a match for Chen Ji. Even if he could win Chen Ji, the second island master wouldn't let him go, someone said. In most people's opinion, Duan Lingtian only managed to injure Chen Ji earlier because he launched a sneak attack. If they were fighting properly, he might not be able to defeat Chen Ji. That person is the son of the second island master of Hidden Fog Island. Moreover, he's the only son. Many martial emperor's disciples and demon emperor's disciples from Cloud Continent were shocked. They did not expect this. At once, their gaze toward Duan Lingtian held a little more pity. Yang Hui's face changed dramatically. He naturally knew what being the only son of the second island master of Hidden Fog Island meant. The second island master of Hidden Fog Island, I heard he's at the 8th level martial emperor stage. Even Lord Qingzhan might not necessarily be his match. Yang Wei was in despair. He immediately turned to Duan Lingtian and urged him through voice transmission, "Brother Lingtian, you should quickly escape with your wives. You've injured the son of the second island master of Hidden Fog Island. It's equivalent to offending the second island master of Hidden Fog Island. He won't let you get away with this." Yang Hui's tone was filled with anxiety. Both Ka and Li Fei also changed their expressions as they looked at Martial Emperor Yuhan coldly. At this moment, they were finally aware that everything was part of Martial Emperor Yuhan's plan. Martial Emperor Yuhan wanted to harm their man. Escape. Duan Lingtian shook his head after listening to Yang Hui's words. He suddenly turned and looked in the distance. An old man surrounded by a young man and a young woman were heading toward them. In just a blink of an eye, they arrived at the venue of the Hidden Fog martial competition. The old man wore a bronze robe. His long hair was tied up with a hair band. His white eyebrows were raised. Somehow, he managed to look imposing without looking fierce. Although he had white hair and white eyebrows, his face was that of a middle-aged man. He did not look like an old man at all. The saying, "one with white hair and a youthful face," described him perfectly. As for the young man behind the old man, he looked handsome and had a bit of similarity to the old man. On the other hand, the young woman looked like the living dead. Her eyes were dull, and her pale face made her look even creepier. Unlike the handsome young man, the young woman looked ordinary. If one were to put her in the crowd, one would have a hard time picking her out from the crowd. Although her appearance was ordinary, her creepiness was very unique. "Greetings, Third Island Master. Greetings, Third Island Master." After the appearance of the bronze-clad old man, a group of Hidden Fog Island's core disciples took the lead and bowed at him. The remaining Hidden Fog Island's inner island disciples, outer island disciples, and the other Hidden Fog Island's martial artists followed suit. They did not dare to be negligent. Among everyone from the Hidden Fog Island, there was only one person who did not bow and greet the bronze-clad old man. That person was Chen Ji. Most of Chen Ji's injuries were healed after he consumed some healing medicinal pills. He glared at Duan Lingtian, completely disregarding the third island master of Hidden Fog Island who had just arrived. He said coldly, "You dare to sneak attack me?" However, Duan Lingtian ignored him. Duan Lingtian's gaze landed on the third island master of Hidden Fog Island. He knew that the arrival of the third island master of Hidden Fog Island meant that the Hidden Fog martial competition was about to begin. However, he did not know whether the third island master of Hidden Fog Island would speak up for Chen Ji or not. "I won't kill you immediately, I'll leave your life hanging on a thread and slowly torture you." Chen Ji flew out. It seemed as though he had transformed into a sharp arrow as he charged at Duan Lingtian with a great momentum. In his opinion, he was injured by Duan Lingtian's attack earlier because Duan Lingtian had launched a sneak attack and caught him off guard. If he had been alert, he would not be hit. He was confident that he was stronger than Duan Lingtian. When the origin energy in Duan Lingtian's body stirred, and he was about to attack Chen Ji, a light reprimand suddenly sounded. "Enough." It stopped Chen Ji. "Third Island Master, he had hurt me earlier, I must seek revenge," Chen Ji said in a low voice as he looked at the Third Island Master. Obviously, the person who stopped Chen Ji was the Third Island Master of Hidden Fog Island. Chapter 1297. The Hidden Fog martial competition is about to begin, you'll have plenty of opportunity for revenge later, now, stop embarrassing the Hidden Fog Island. The third island master of Hidden Fog Island said sternly in a deep voice. His gaze was cold. HPMH. Chenji seemed to be afraid of the third island master of Hidden Fog Island. He glanced at Duan Lingtian and snorted. I'll allow you to stay alive for a little while longer. During the Hidden Fog martial competition, I'll definitely kill you and let you die without a burial place. I'll wait and see. Duan Lingtian calmed the origin energy in his body and glanced at Chenji indifferently. He looked relaxed as though he did not fear Chenji at all. Naturally, he was really not afraid of Chenji. The third island master of Hidden Fog Island seems to hate Chenji. Duan Lingtian seemed to have noticed something. Moreover, he also noticed that the young man standing behind the third island master of Hidden Fog Island had also looked at Chenji with flashing eyes. It seems like Chenji's relations on the Hidden Fog Island are not good. However, Chenji's father is the second island master of Hidden Fog Island. Logically speaking, they should be close to the third island master of Hidden Fog Island. Why does the third island master hate Chenji so much? Duan Lingtian was puzzled. What Duan Lingtian did not know was the third island master of Hidden Fog Island once had a naturally gifted female direct disciple whom he favored. However, she had chosen to commit suicide after she was raped by Chenji. If it was not for the second island master's protection and the first island master's interference, he would have killed Chenji long ago. Although many years had passed, his hatred for Chenji did not lessen. He had promised the first island master that he would not kill Chenji, but he could not help but pull a long face whenever he encountered Chenji. The young man standing behind the third island master was the third island master's grandchild. The third island master's direct disciple who was raped by Chenji was not only his senior sister, but she was also engaged to him. His fiancée was raped and committed suicide because of that. His hatred for Chenji was obvious. Chenji, I'll kill you one day and avenge Kair. The young man glared at Chenji with a cold killing intent. However, he knew that he was not a match for Chenji with his strength. Among the people who were watching, Martial Emperor Yuhan's face sank. She did not expect the third island master of Hidden Fog Island would appear in that moment and completely disrupt her plan. Originally, according to her plan, Duan Lingtian would kill Chenji. Once Chenji died, she would kill Duan Lingtian and snatch his spatial ring. Since he's the third reincarnation of the rebirth Martial Emperor, he must have a lot of rare treasures in his hands. She wanted to wait until Chenji was killed because she was worried the Hidden Fog Island's powerhouse from the other day would save Duan Lingtian again. In her opinion, once Duan Lingtian killed the only son of the second island master of Hidden Fog Island, Chenji, the Hidden Fog Island's powerhouse would not save Duan Lingtian again. Currently, she had given up hope on enslaving Duan Lingtian. She just wanted the spatial ring in Duan Lingtian's hands. However, the timely appearance of the third island master of Hidden Fog Island had completely disrupted her plan. Meanwhile, the third island master of Hidden Fog Island began to announce the rules of the Hidden Fog martial competition after he greeted the Cloud Continent's Martial Emperor powerhouses and Demon Emperor powerhouses. In the Hidden Fog martial competition, only those who are ranked in the top 30 will advance to the next round. Those who advanced will be rewarded, especially those who are in the top 10. The people who recommended them will get a bonus reward. The third island master of Hidden Fog Island said. Instantly, many pairs of eyes lit up. The Hidden Fog martial competition was organized by the Hidden Fog Island. Therefore, the rewards could not be terrible. There was a flash in Duan Lingtian's eyes. Naturally, he knew the bonus reward the third island master of Hidden Fog Island spoke of was none other than the Saint Stone. After the Hidden Fog martial competition ended, the Cloud Continent's Martial Emperor powerhouses or Demon Emperor powerhouses who recommended the person who ranked first would obtain 10 Saint Stones. Second place and third place would obtain 5 Saint Stones respectively. The fourth, fifth, and sixth place would obtain 3 Saint Stones each. The 7th to 10th place would only obtain 1 Saint Stone. He had learned all of these from Martial Emperor Ling Zan. Apart from that, once the Hidden Fog martial competition begins, it's a fight until death unless one surrenders. Once someone surrenders, the other party may not continue their attacks. I'll interfere if there's anyone who disregards the rules, the third island master of Hidden Fog Island continued to speak. Fight till death. At once, some of the Martial Emperor's disciples with lower cultivation base changed their expression slightly as they became a little heavy-hearted. They reminded themselves to surrender immediately if they were to encounter an opponent they could not defeat. When the third island master of Hidden Fog Island finished speaking, Duan Lingtian could clearly feel a violent and vicious gaze on him. He could guess to whom the gaze belonged to without even having to look. Chen Ji. Soon after, the third island master of Hidden Fog Island continued speaking. The Hidden Fog Martial Competition officially begins. The rules of the Hidden Fog Martial Competition were simple. Participants would be eliminated until only 30 remained. These 30 people would advance to the next round. That would be the end of the first round. During the second round, the 10 strongest participants would be chosen. After that, the rankings of the 10 participants would be determined during the third round. Following the explanation of the rules, they had to draw lots. After every participant had gotten a number, the Hidden Fog Martial Competition officially began. Time passed by silently. Duan Lingtian gradually began to suspect that the third island master of Hidden Fog Island had tampered with the lots. It was too coincidental that no martial emperor met another martial emperor in the first round. All of the martial emperors' opponents were merely martial monarchs. Could that be possible if they had drawn the lots normally? Duan Lingtian believed that even if the third island master of Hidden Fog Island had checked their cultivation base with his powerful spiritual energy, they would not notice it since the gap between their cultivation base was too wide. The battles were one-sided after the lots were drawn. Martial Emperor stage versus Martial Monarch stage. One could imagine the results. After a while, the results of the 30 participants who had successfully advanced to the next round were out. 26 of them were at the Martial Emperor stage, and 5 of them were under Martial Emperor Qingzan. However, the number was still inferior to the number of Hidden Fog Island's Martial Emperor stage core disciples. There were 7 Hidden Fog Island's Martial Emperor stage core disciples including Chen Ji. The young woman standing behind the third island master of Hidden Fog Island was also a Martial Emperor stage core disciple. There was also another young man. He was not at the Martial Emperor stage but at the peak of the Martial Monarch stage. Among the 30 participants who advanced to the second round, 26 of them were Martial Emperor powerhouses, and only 4 were at the peak of the Martial Monarch stage. It was equivalent to having 1 foot in the Martial Emperor stage. The grandson of the third island master of Hidden Fog Island was one of them. For Lingzan Peak, only Duan Lingtian and Zhou Di managed to advance to the second round. The other 8 were eliminated. As for Yuhan Valley, only Xu Rong managed to advance to the next round. Both Lanbai and Zhou Yi from Thundercloud Peak also managed to advance. There were also some disciples of the other Martial Emperor powerhouses and Demon Emperor powerhouses from Cloud Continent, and almost all who managed to advance to the second round were at the Martial Emperor stage. There were only 2 at the peak of the Martial Monarch stage. The final martial artist at the peak of the Martial Monarch stage who managed to advance to the next round was also a Hidden Fog Island's core disciple. In other words, there were 10 Hidden Fog Island's core disciples who participated in the Hidden Fog Martial Competition, and 9 of them managed to advance to the second round. Only 1 person did not make the cut. For a time, the group of Hidden Fog Island's core disciples became the center of attention. That's amazing. They're worthy of being the core disciples of the Overseas Saint Island's Hidden Fog Island. 10 people participated in the Hidden Fog Martial Competition, and only 1 was eliminated after the first round. It's such a coincidence, none of the Martial Emperors were matched with another Martial Emperor in the first round. When they drew lots earlier, the third island master must have done something. Actually, that's understandable, they must save the best for last in order to make the others look forward to it. You're right, there was a buzz among the onlookers. They had high expectations for the second round of the competition. They were certain there would definitely be matches between Martial Emperors. These battles were what they were most excited about and had anticipated to watch. This Zhou Yi actually broke through to the Martial Emperor stage. Duan Lingtian looked at Zhou Yi who was standing in the distance with a look of surprise on his face that he could not conceal. Although Zhou Yi did not unleash his full strength in the earlier battle, he could clearly sense that Zhou Yi had broken through to the Martial Emperor stage. This female disciple from Thundercloud Peak is even stronger than Zhou Yi. Duan Lingtian's gaze shifted from Zhou Yi to the woman next to him. That woman was in no way inferior to the other men. Her strength was far superior compared to Zhou Yi. The woman whom Duan Lingtian was staring at was Martial Emperor Lei Ming of Thundercloud Peak's favorite direct disciple, Lan Bai. All 5 of the people that Martial Emperor Qingzan brought managed to advance to the next round, however, that's not unusual considering they're all at the Martial Emperor stage. Duan Lingtian's eyes continued to sweep past the 5 people who came with Martial Emperor Qingzan. Soon after, Duan Lingtian's eyes landed on Martial Emperor Chu Li. To be precise, his eyes were trained on Dong Hu, who was standing beside Martial Emperor Chu Li. He was no stranger to him. They had even fought before. You're lucky in the first round of the martial competition, in the second round, you won't be as lucky. Chen Ji stood at a distance and glared at Duan Lingtian. One could see the overwhelming anger rising in his eyes. However, Duan Lingtian did not bother with him from the beginning until the end. That only served to make Chen Ji angrier. The second round of the martial competition will now begin. The second round of the Hidden Fog martial competition officially began after the third island master spoke. Many spectators who were originally sleepy became awake instantly as though they were on steroids. They stared in anticipation, waiting for the second round to begin. The second round began as scheduled. Finally, there were fights between Martial Emperor powerhouses. The ferocity of the battle was beyond comparison to the first round. Chapter 1298. In just a short period of time, 2 Martial Emperors had already died. Duan Lingtian's first opponent in the second round of the martial competition was the last person he wanted to meet. Thundercloud Peak's Lan Bai. Both of them are Thundercloud Peak's disciple. Zhou Yi definitely has a profound understanding of Lan Bai's strength. If I defeat Lan Bai, I'm afraid he'll surrender immediately before I even attack if he's matched with me. Duan Lingtian was somewhat upset. Originally, he planned to kill Zhou Yi during the Hidden Fog martial competition and retrieve the Devilseal tablet that originally belonged to him. However, things had turned a little tricky now. Lan Bai was the direct disciple of Cloud Continent's Martial Emperor Lei Ming, master of the Thundercloud Peak. According to Yang Wei, she was at the second-level Martial Emperor stage and was extremely strong. She was definitely more powerful than Zhou Yi. Naturally, such strength was nothing to him. He could defeat her without even using the Colossal Aerolite Arrow or any other martial skill. Never mind, I'll let her win so I can obtain the Devilseal tablet. Shortly after, Duan Lingtian made up his mind. Following that, the battle between Duan Lingtian and Lan Bai merely lasted around 10 breaths' time under everyone's watchful eyes before he was completely defeated. It seemed as though he could not retaliate at all when they fought. On the surface, it was flawless. Almost no one, including Lan Bai, realized that Duan Lingtian had deliberately lost the battle. Congratulations, senior sister Bai. After Lan Bai won, Zhou Yi was the first to congratulate her. He looked at Duan Lingtian as his eyes gleamed coldly. Although Duan Lingtian has broken through to the Martial Emperor stage like me, he merely lasted around 10 breaths' time with senior sister Bai. His strength is far inferior compared to mine. A few days ago, Zhou Yi had just sparred with Lan Bai. Lan Bai could not beat him within 20 breaths' time. Due to this reason, he concluded that Duan Lingtian was not his match. Brother Lingtian, Yang Wei was stunned. Regarding Duan Lingtian's defeat, it was nothing out of the ordinary for those who did not know his strength. However, for Yang Wei, Ka, and Li Fei who knew his strength, they were all looking at him in confusion. They did not understand why Duan Lingtian would let her win. All of them could see that Duan Lingtian had held back earlier and deliberately lost to Lan Bai. I didn't want to arouse any suspicion, Duan Lingtian replied leisurely when he heard the voice transmission from Yang Wei and the 2 women. Did not want to arouse any suspicion. The 3 of them looked around after hearing those words, but they did not find anything amiss. He dares to join the Hidden Fog martial competition with such strength. Chen Ji could not help but sneer when he saw how easily Duan Lingtian was defeated. He could see through Lan Bai's strength from the beginning until the end. Although their cultivation base was almost similar, her strength was no match for his. Now, Duan Lingtian had been defeated by Lan Bai. If he dares to fight me, I won't give him any chance to surrender, Chen Ji swore to himself as he stared at Duan Lingtian coldly. If there was another person at the scene that could see the abnormality of the battle apart from Yang Wei, Ka, and Li Fei who knew Duan Lingtian's strength, Martial Emperor Yuhan was undoubtedly one of them. She had fought with Duan Lingtian before. Although they only exchanged a blow, she was certain Duan Lingtian's strength was definitely not any lesser than the 4th-level Martial Emperor stage. He doesn't seem to know that female disciple from Thundercloud Peak but still deliberately lost the battle, he must be plotting something. There was a glint in Martial Emperor Yuhan's eyes as she speculated inwardly. However, she could not guess what the other party was trying to do. In addition to Martial Emperor Yuhan, there was another person who noticed the abnormality. It was Martial Emperor Qingzan. Martial Emperor Qingzan glanced at Duan Lingtian. His eyes glinted before he averted his gaze. The thoughts running through his mind remained a mystery. That's his strength. If that's his full strength, he'll certainly die if he meets Chen Ji. Unless he surrenders immediately, it won't end well for him. A lot of Hidden Fog Island's core disciples were whispering among themselves as they looked at Duan Lingtian standing in the distance. Chen Ji's face sank when he heard the whisperings of the Hidden Fog Island's core disciples. He was afraid Duan Lingtian would be scared off by the core disciples, chatter and immediately surrender when they meet. That was not what he wanted. However, he had overthought things. As time passed, the 4 martial artists at the peak of the martial monarch stage were eliminated consecutively. Some of the martial emperor powerhouses were also eliminated, and 3 were killed. One of the martial emperor powerhouses who was killed was a man under martial emperor Qingzan. The other 2 martial emperors who were killed were core disciples from the Hidden Fog Island. The situation was getting intense. Swish, crack. Suddenly, a piercing sound reverberated in the air. The clear sound of something clawing into a body followed soon after. It made everyone's blood curdle. The pale young woman had used a type of claw martial skill and clawed into her opponent's chest. Her pair of hands seemed boneless as it forcefully tore into her opponent's chest. After a few moments, she ripped out a beating heart. Snapped. As the martial emperor powerhouse whose heart was ripped out stopped breathing and fell to the ground, the young woman clenched her hand and crushed the heart in her hand. Blood splattered everywhere. It was a dazzling yet spine-chilling sight. Gory. Too gory. Many people's faces were distorted because of the scare. So strong. She has already broken through to the 3rd-level martial emperor stage. Duan Lingtian looked at the young woman. He was shocked. That pale young woman remained expressionless from the very beginning, just like the living dead. She was none other than the young woman who came with the 3rd island master of Hidden Fog Island. Unlike most people's expressions that looked horrible, the 3rd island master of Hidden Fog Island looked pleased. This was because, apart from being a core disciple of Hidden Fog Island, she was also his direct disciple. It did not take long until it was Duan Lingtian's turn again. This was his final battle in the 2nd round of the Hidden Fog martial competition. If he won, he would be ranked in the top 10 of the Hidden Fog martial competition. He would then compete with the others for the exact ranking in the later round. However, so far, he still had not encountered Zhou Yi. When Duan Lingtian entered the battlefield, his opponent followed and confronted him. Do you think he'll surrender? A lot of people were looking at Duan Lingtian as they discussed among themselves. I think he'll definitely surrender. After all, he can't even win against that female powerhouse, and she had lost to Chen Ji. Some of them talked while looking at the people from Thundercloud Peak. Their eyes landed on Lan Bai. Lan Bai had previously lost to Chen Ji. I was wondering when they'll meet. I didn't think they would meet in the 2nd round. Most of the people watching looked like they were on steroids. Currently, the person who stood opposite him was none other than Chen Ji. Chen Ji, the one who was blasted away and was seriously injured by Duan Lingtian not too long ago. The only son of the 2nd island master of Hidden Fog Island. Seems like God is also giving me his blessing. Chen Ji stared at the purple-clad young man before him excitedly. In his opinion, he would be able to kill him and redeem himself from the embarrassment earlier now that he met him. Moreover, if he killed his opponent's women would become his. Chen Ji was excited when he thought about the 2 peerless beauties. The thing he was most worried about now was Duan Lingtian surrendering. If that happened, he would lose his chance to seek revenge. It was not what he wanted. When Chen Ji looked over, Duan Lingtian was also looking at Chen Ji. His eyes were as cold as ice. I didn't expect to meet him so soon. I won't hand over the victory just like that. I must win this battle. I can't lose. Duan Lingtian thought to himself as his eyes glinted. At this moment, he could no longer worry about Zhou Yi finding out about his true strength. He could not be bothered even if Zhou Yi became wary of him because of his subsequent attacks or if he surrenders when they meet. He only knew he could let anyone but Chen Ji win. Moreover, he also wanted to teach Chen Ji an unforgettable lesson. Boy, I'll kill you soon. After I kill you, your fiancés will be mine. When Chen Ji spoke, he pointed toward Ka and Li Fei to intentionally provoke Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian was indeed angered. Want to kill me? I want to see which one of us will die. Duan Lingtian responded indifferently, not wanting to show any weakness. Don't have to think about it because it won't be me. Chen Ji sneered as his robe fluttered even though there was no wind. A vast milky white flame rose along with energies in various colors. It was Chen Ji exerting his origin energy and profundities. Chen Ji's strength was considered at the top among the few second-level martial emperor stage martial artists. He might even be a match for an ordinary third-level martial emperor stage martial artist. He attacked as quick as a lightning and headed straight for Duan Lingtian like a tiger charging down from a mountain. It was as though he would not rest until he tore Duan Lingtian into pieces. The purple-clad young man is going to die soon. He can only be considered unlucky for meeting Chen Ji. In that split second, many people were whispering among themselves. All of them thought Duan Lingtian was going to die in Chen Ji's hands. After all, they had seen Duan Lingtian defeated by Lan Bai, and she was defeated by Chen Ji. For a time, apart from those people who knew of Duan Lingtian's strength, most people including the third island master of Hidden Fog Island, thought that Duan Lingtian would definitely be defeated or even killed. Chapter 1299. What's the matter, Qing Zan? You have faith in this fellow? Without knowing when, Demon Emperor Man Wu had arrived next to Martial Emperor Qing Zan. He realized Martial Emperor Qing Zan's eyes were trained on the purple-clad young man when he followed his line of sight. More than 90% of them had a feeling the purple-clad young man would lose. You must have misjudged the situation this time. Demon Emperor Man Ku did not wait for Martial Emperor Qing Zan to respond before he shook his head and said, "This fellow's at the first-level Martial Emperor stage while that Hidden Fog Island core disciple's at the second-level Martial Emperor stage. Judging from the ability he displayed earlier, he's comparable to a third-level Martial Emperor stage martial artist. It's a piece of cake for him to defeat this purple-clad young man at the first-level Martial Emperor stage," Demon Emperor Man Wu said. "Just watch." Martial Emperor Qing Zan smiled lightly as he looked at the purple-clad young man, who was none other than Duan Lingtian, in the distance. He seemed to have full confidence in him. "Seems like God's blessing me with another opportunity." There was a hint of greed sparkling in the depth of Martial Emperor Yuhan's eyes. In her opinion, as soon as Duan Lingtian killed Chen Ji, and as long as that Hidden Fog Island's powerhouse stopped helping Duan Lingtian, it would be easy for her to kill him and snatch his spatial ring away. She had witnessed Duan Lingtian's ability previously. She was certain he was capable of killing Chen Ji. "I've decided not to kill you, I'll sever your dantian and your limbs instead. You'll watch as your two fiancés have fun on my crotch." Chen Ji grinned and dashed out. He seemed to have turned into a lightning bolt as he charged toward Duan Lingtian. Without knowing when, a sword appeared in his hand. It was a quasi-royal grade spirit sword that gave a 100% boost. In just a glance, Duan Lingtian recognized it was another quasi-royal grade spirit sword that the Rebirth Martial Emperor crafted. It must have been left behind by the Rebirth Martial Emperor 10,000 years ago. After all, a quasi-royal grade spirit sword would not deteriorate over time. They were left behind and ended up in the hands of powerhouses. Every time a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon appeared, they would catch the attention of many people. Duan Lingtian's face turned grave when he heard Chen Ji's barbaric words. Killing intent flashed in the depth of his eyes. On the other hand, Li Fei and Kai's expression did not look too good. Chen Ji's words had undoubtedly humiliated them. At this moment, Yang Hui's expression changed drastically. He immediately advised Duan Lingtian through voice transmission. "Brother Lingtian, please don't be impulsive, just pretend he's a dog barking, don't take it seriously. No matter what, he's the only son of the second island master of Hidden Fog Island. If you kill him, you and your two fiancés would be in danger." This was not his first time meeting Duan Lingtian. However, this was the first time he saw Duan Lingtian so enraged. It seemed as though he would not give up if he did not kill Chen Ji. He's still unwilling to yield. The people from Thundercloud Peak were standing not far away. Zhou Yi's face turned solemn as he watched Duan Lingtian's back. Just like everyone else, he did not think Duan Lingtian would be able to defeat Chen Ji. He could also tell Chen Ji really wanted Duan Lingtian dead. However, if Duan Lingtian was killed, the secret hidden in the tablet would die with him. This was something he did not want to see happen. The only thing he wished for was that Duan Lingtian would surrender so his life would be spared. Then, Duan Lingtian could solve the mystery of the tablet for him. Whoosh, 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 Chen Ji dashed toward Duan Lingtian as he swung the sword in his hand like a flowing dragon. Countless sword rays swept across the sky like a meteor shower. The terrifying sound of sword whistling echoed and the air vibrated in his wake. It was followed by the faint sound of air explosion. Die! Seeing that he was getting closer and closer to Duan Lingtian, Chen Ji shouted suddenly. His eyes were cold. He pointed the quasi-royal grade spirit sword in his hand at Duan Lingtian as though he had divine help. At this moment, everyone who was watching could not help but inhale sharply. Most of them were looking at Duan Lingtian sympathetically. In their opinion, judging by the situation, it was too late for Duan Lingtian even if he wanted to surrender now. Many of them seemed to be certain about Duan Lingtian's outcome in the next moment. The fellow's surprisingly calm. I wonder if he's really capable. Demon Emperor Man Wu was a little surprised. He clearly saw the purple-clad young man did not only remain motionless when facing the terrifying attack, but even his facial expression remained unchanged. Looking at Chen Ji who was charging toward him, Duan Lingtian's eyes remained calm. It was as though he would remain motionless even if Mount Tai were to collapse before his eyes. Just as Chen Ji's sword arrived near Duan Lingtian, Demon Emperor Man Wu's eyes lit up. His eyes lit up because he clearly saw the purple-clad young man had moved. His speed was even faster than Chen Ji. So he had hidden his ability earlier. That was all Demon Emperor Man Wu could think of at this moment. Although Duan Lingtian's speed was fast, it was nothing to Demon Emperor Man Wu who was at the 7th level Demon Emperor stage. When he looked closely, Duan Lingtian's movement was much slower in his eyes. Naturally, Chen Ji's movement was even slower. He clearly saw a sword appearing out of thin air in the hands of the purple-clad young man who had hidden his ability earlier. A 5-colored sword ray subsequently shone on the sword. He shook the sword in his hand. In the next second, there were 2 swords in his hand. Demon Emperor Man Wu could not help but feel shocked by the speed of the sword. That sword speed, I'm afraid only powerhouses above the 4th level Martial Emperor stage are able to display such sword speed. Ah! When Demon Emperor Man Wu was lost in his own thoughts, a devastating scream resounded in the air. It was extremely ear-piercing. Many people from Hidden Fog Island who had a lower cultivation base changed their expressions immediately. Some even ruptured their eardrums, causing fresh blood to leak out of their ears. The scream snapped everyone back to their senses. Subsequently, everyone clearly saw the purple-clad young man who was standing still earlier had vanished at some point. He was now hovering high in the sky. He stood there as his purple robe fluttered in the wind. He looked majestic. Soon after, they noticed someone whose look was contradictory to the purple-clad young man's majesty. The Hidden Fog Island's core disciple, Chen Ji, whom they were certain would win the fight, looked wretched. He had lost the ferocious stance he had earlier. At this very moment, Chen Ji covered his mouth with one hand while the other hand was covering his crotch between his legs. The 2 spots were spurting fresh blood continuously at this moment. The blood spurted across the sky like striking red roses. Many of them had goosebumps at this moment. They finally reacted when they discovered why Chen Ji was screaming so wretchedly. His mouth and crotch were crushed into a mess. Judging from Chen Ji's mouth that was spurting blood and the injury on his crotch, it was clear that the 2 spots were useless now. They were injured beyond help. As Chen Ji screamed, he glared at Duan Lingtian with his bloodshot eyes. It was as though he was glaring at an enemy who had killed his father and took his wife away. It was difficult for him to accept the fact since he was a womanizer. He was injured by Duan Lingtian, and he was now a eunuch. Moreover, he was a mute eunuch. He was filled with resentment. Although he resented Duan Lingtian, there was nothing he could do. You're dead, you're so dead. My father won't let you go, my father won't let you go. While Chen Ji glared at Duan Lingtian, he did not stop threatening Duan Lingtian through voice transmission. At this moment, the people who were watching finally reacted. An uproar erupted just as expected. I can't believe Chen Ji's no match for him. Seems like he hid his ability earlier. Oh, God, did he intentionally hide his ability just for this? If that's the case, did he lose to Thundercloud Peak's Lanbai earlier on purpose? Isn't that obvious? Lanbai couldn't defeat Chen Ji. How's it possible that she's more powerful than the person whose ability is obviously higher than Chen Ji? He's so cruel though, he didn't only injure Chen Ji's mouth but his manhood as well. I can understand why he injured Chen Ji's manhood, but why did he injure Chen Ji's mouth as well? The spectators discussed among themselves, many of them were confused. They wondered why Duan Lingtian had injured Chen Ji's mouth as well. His ability's so powerful. Meanwhile, on Thundercloud Peak's side, Lanbai's expression changed drastically. She was sweating profusely. She knew very well that she might have been killed if the purple-clad young man did not intentionally lose to her when they fought earlier. He could kill her in just a blow if he had wanted to. But why did he deliberately lose to me? Is it all to hide his ability from Chen Ji? Lan Bai could not understand that. It puzzled her. Chen Ji did not know about her ability in the beginning. Even if Duan Lingtian had defeated her when they fought, it still would not alarm Chen Ji. Although Lan Bai could not figure it out, Zhou Yi could. This Duan Lingtian must have lost to Lan Bai on purpose so that he could bait me to kill me. Zhou Yi's face turned solemn. He figured out the reason why Duan Lingtian lost to Lan Bai on purpose. He was undoubtedly aiming at him. Naturally, Zhou Yi had no idea that Duan Lingtian knew the Devil Seal tablet was with him. He thought Duan Lingtian just wanted to take revenge. Fortunately, he fought Chen Zi first, otherwise, I would definitely die if we were to fight. Zhou Yi was sure of that. At this moment, Zhou Yi worriedly looked at Chen Ji, whose mouth and manhood was injured. I should thank Chen Ji then. I'm dead. Your father won't let me go. Duan Lingtian smiled when he heard Chen Ji's threat. His smile was charming. At the same time, he slowly flew closer to Chen Ji. He hovered before Chen Ji as his smile widened. Too bad you won't be able to see that happen. Chapter 1300. What are you trying to do? Although Chen Ji's mouth was smashed into a bloody mess now, not being able to speak did not mean he could not use voice transmission. While he was speaking to Duan Lingtian through voice transmission, he had fear written all over his face. How could he behave arrogantly earlier? Duan Lingtian did not speak. Instead, he responded to Chen Ji with his action. Whoosh! He swung 4 swords simultaneously. It was so fast that most of the people present only heard the fleeting sound of sword whistling. Only a few of them heard the sound of all 4 swords whistling. Pooh, 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 pooh. Blood spurted from Chen Ji's body. Terrifying bloody wounds appeared on both of his arms and legs at the same time. This scene caused chills to run up everyone's spines. Meanwhile, Chen Ji's devastating scream reverberated in the air over and over again. However, his scream sounded strange since his mouth was destroyed. One could imagine the pain he was going through from his shuddering and his terrified face. The pain was unbearable. Although he hated Duan Lingtian, he was no longer glaring at him like before. He was only left with one thought at the moment. I don't want to die. Chen Ji was suffering from unimaginable pain. He looked at Duan Lingtian and said through voice transmission, I surrender, I surrender. I surrender. However, Duan Lingtian did not seem to hear him as he lifted the sword in his hand slowly. There was a cold gleam in his emotionless eyes. Why isn't Chen Ji surrendering? Many of the spectators were shocked. The outcome was clear, but why was Chen Ji not surrendering? Was he asking for death? That's not right. Chen Ji's mouth is destroyed, it's impossible even if he wants to surrender. That's right. Even if he surrenders to Duan Lingtian through voice transmission, Duan Lingtian can still kill him and pretend like he didn't hear him. Many people reacted soon after. At this moment, they came to a realization. No wonder he destroyed Chen Ji's mouth, he didn't want Chen Ji to surrender. He could have killed Chen Ji in the beginning if he wanted to, it's obvious that he wants to torture Chen Ji slowly now and kill him later. He must be worried that Chen Ji might surrender, that's the reason why he destroyed his mouth. Many of them managed to figure it out. They felt a chill from the bottom of their feet that rushed straight to their heads as they thought to this point. There was fear on their faces and eyes when they looked at Duan Lingtian again. Their words entered Chen Ji's ears, causing him to regain his senses. At this moment, Chen Ji turned his head strenuously to look at the third island master of Hidden Fog Island. He said through voice transmission while he endured the unimaginable pain, "Third Island Master, save me. Please save me. I surrender. I surrender." Chen Ji continued to speak through voice transmission. His voice was laced with anxiety. Whoosh! When Chen Ji was calling out for help from the third island master, a sword ray fell from the sky and sliced him into 2. The entire process was very neat. Meanwhile, the sky above the vast ocean fell silent. Although there was a crowd, it was as quiet as the still ocean. Plop, plop, the spectators regained their senses when Chen Ji's body that was sliced into 2 fell into the water. Before that happened, Duan Lingtian remembered to collect the rewards. He put away the spatial ring and quasi-royal grade spirit sword in Chen Ji's hand without leaving anything behind. Chen Ji must have possessed something good since he was the only son of the second island master of Hidden Fog Island. The third island master looked deep into Duan Lingtian's eyes. Although he did not plan to respond to Chen Ji's call of distress through voice transmission, the speed in which Duan Lingtian killed Chen Ji was faster than the time it took for him to react. Even if he wanted to save Chen Ji, which he did not want to, it was too late. He's really daring, he even dares to kill the second island master's only son. The third island master was shocked as he studied Duan Lingtian. Although he was shocked, he was a little happy because he had long wanted Chen Ji to die. He could not do anything to Chen Ji due to the promise he made to the first island master back then. Naturally, he was happy that somebody killed Chen Ji now. The young man, the third island master's grandson, revealed a charming smile on his face as he stood in the distance. His smile turned a little maniacal. Chen Ji's dead, Chen Ji's dead, Chen Ji's finally dead. Kyer, did you see that? Duan Lingtian entered the top 10 after killing Chen Ji. When Duan Lingtian returned to the people from Lingzan Peak, he looked at the third island master of Hidden Fog Island and asked, "Third island master, your Hidden Fog Island has a rule that says killing is allowed during the Hidden Fog martial competition. I know Chen Ji is the second island master's only son. I presume there won't be anyone trying to seek revenge from me due to his death." Of course not. The third island master shook his head. Life and death are meaningless in the Hidden Fog martial competition. Even if my grandchildren and my direct disciples were to die in the Hidden Fog martial competition, I won't look for trouble with the person who killed them. That's great then. Duan Lingtian nodded lightly. FWAH. At that same time, an uproar erupted among the crowd as expected. He really killed Chen Ji. It's true he's allowed to kill Chen Ji in Hidden Fog martial competition, however, even if the second island master of Hidden Fog Island can't kill him publicly, he'll definitely kill him secretly to avenge his son. This Duan Lingtian has gone insane. Everyone looked at Duan Lingtian one after another. There were shock and sympathy in those eyes. In their opinion, the fact that Duan Lingtian dared to kill the only son of the second island master of Hidden Fog Island was akin to asking for death. It was impossible that Duan Lingtian would live. However, had Duan Lingtian really gone insane? Naturally, he had not. There are so many people here, even if that second island master of Hidden Fog Island heard about this, it'll definitely be difficult for him to attack me. I'll leave with Ka and Little Fair after obtaining the 10 Saint Stones. As long as I stay far away from this Hidden Fog Island, why should I be afraid of the second island master of Hidden Fog Island? Duan Lingtian made up his mind. He was not a hasty person. Since he decided to kill Chen Ji, he already had a plan. Naturally, this was just his current plan. I can't believe he really killed Chen Ji. In that case, it's impossible for that Hidden Fog Island's powerhouse to help him. I'll follow him and kill him after the Hidden Fog martial competition ends. A cold gleam flashed in Martial Emperor Yuhan's eyes. And I'll also kill the 2 bitches around him. Could that fellow be a demon emperor? This doesn't seem like something a timid human martial emperor is capable of doing, Demon Emperor Manwu speculated, shocked. Demon emperors were demons. A demon's nature was that of a demon beast. Compared to humans, demon beasts had an irascible temper. Although they possessed intelligence that was on par with humans, their temper was not as restrained as humans. This was why Demon Emperor Manwu came to his conclusion. He's a martial emperor, Martial Emperor Qingzan said calmly at this moment. He's a human. Demon Emperor Manwu was shocked. He's not just a human, he's an extraordinarily talented human. Martial Emperor Qingzan said. Qingzan, do you know him? Demon Emperor Manwu was stunned. Martial Emperor Qingzan smiled. He did not respond to Demon Emperor Manwu. Damn it, how did this Duan Lingtian become so powerful? Meanwhile, Zhou Yi, who was at Thundercloud Peak's side, had an extremely terrible expression on his face. With his ability, it's impossible for me to pressure him into telling me about the secrets of the mysterious tablet. I can get Martial Emperor Lei Ming to help me in other matters, but this is about the mysterious tablet, it's impossible to ask for Martial Emperor Lei Ming's help. Zhou Yi knew that very well. If Martial Emperor Lei Ming found out about the amazing things the mysterious tablet in his hand was capable of, he would definitely take it for himself. That was something he did not want to see happening. Oh, well, I'll have to give up. Zhou Yi made a hard decision. His current situation was like a beggar who had not eaten for days and had suddenly found a fragrant roasted chicken out of nowhere. However, just as he was about to eat the roasted chicken, somebody told him the roasted chicken was poisoned. He would die if he ate it. Naturally, he would have to give up eating it. Brother Lingtian, you are too impulsive, Yang Wei said with a forced smile. Nobody's allowed to humiliate my women. Duan Lingtian said calmly as his eyes gleamed. The tone in his voice brooked no argument. Ka and Li Fei's beautiful eyes were gentle like flowing water when they heard what Duan Lingtian said as they stood next to him. They leaned on Duan Lingtian's sides and held his arms. They were willing to be with their man whether in life or in death. The Hidden Fog martial competition will resume. At this moment, the voice of the third island master of Hidden Fog Island resounded in the air. He announced that the Hidden Fog martial competition would carry on. Perhaps the gory scene earlier had affected the people. The participants in the next match did not hold back as they attacked at full strength and used killer moves as soon as the match began. Soon after, a few martial emperor powerhouses had fallen. Innate ability. Someone suddenly shouted and woke Duan Lingtian, who was resting with his eyes closed. When Duan Lingtian opened his eyes, he saw a black lotus shooting out from between a black-clad young man's eyebrows. It was headed toward his opponent. The black lotus did not stop spinning as it shot out. Facing the ferocious black lotus, a blue-clad middle-aged man, the black-clad young man's opponent, exerted his energy to block it. However, the defensive shield formed from his energy could not block the black lotus at all. The black lotus pierced through the defensive shield without any resistance. Although the defensive shield remained, the black lotus pierced through the blue-clad middle-aged man's body. He shook from the attack even though there were no apparent wounds on his body. In the next second, he fell silently with his eyes open. It's a soul attack innate ability. Duan Lingtian's heart jolted. The black lotus was the black-clad young man's innate ability that was mobilized with his spiritual energy. It was a spiritual energy attack, and it was also a soul attack. It was difficult for an ordinary martial emperor powerhouse to attack another martial emperor powerhouse with soul attack unless one specially cultivated soul attack. Meanwhile, people who possessed soul attack innate ability were different as their own spiritual energies were used as tools to mobilize their innate ability.